She slammed the door open and walked straight into the room where Alexander Moretti was sitting surrounded by 5 armed men, and said without blinking, "Tell your people to step back, because if you think I'm going to disappear quietly, just because your enemies put a price on my head, you have completely mistaken the woman your brother calls fragile." Every man in that room reached for his weapon. Alexander raised one hand, and they all froze. Then, for the first time in 10 years of running one of the most feared criminal organizations in New York City, Alexander Moretti smiled. If you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stay with us until the very end of this story. Drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's go back to where it all began. Sophia Bennett had rules. She had always had rules. Rule number 1. Never talk about what Ethan does for work at family dinners. Rule number 2. Never ask questions you don't actually want answered. Rule number 3. Stay in your lane. Keep your shop open. Keep your head down. Keep breathing. Those 3 rules had kept her safe for 29 years. They had kept her apartment small and clean and quiet. They had kept her flower shop on the corner of West 31st, running without trouble. They had kept the life she built, the only life she had ever wanted, intact and undisturbed. And then, one Tuesday night in November, Ethan called her from a hospital she had never heard of in a part of the city she didn't recognize, and all 3 rules collapsed at the same time. "Soph." His voice came through the phone ragged and too thin. "I need you." "Ethan, what happened? Where are you?" "I can't say it on the phone. Just come. Come alone. And Soph." He stopped. She could hear him breathing. She could hear something wet in that breath that made her stomach drop. "Don't bring your car. Take a cab. Pay cash. Don't use your card." "Ethan, you're scaring me." "Good." He said it quietly. "You should be scared. Get here fast." She wrote down the address on the back of a flower order receipt, orange tulips for a Mrs. Alvarez on the 14th, and she grabbed her coat and she did everything exactly as he said. She paid cash. She took the cab. She didn't ask the driver to hurry because she was afraid of what she would find if she got there too fast. She found him anyway. The place was not a real hospital. She understood that the moment the cab pulled up and she saw the building, an unmarked warehouse converted into something that looked sterile only if you didn't look too closely. A man she didn't recognize opened the heavy metal door before she even knocked. He looked at her the way people look at things that have arrived at the wrong address. "You're the sister," he said. It was not a question. "Where is he?" The man stepped aside without answering. Ethan was in a back room lying on a metal table with a woman in scrubs working on his left side. There was a lot of blood. Sophia had grown up reading crime novels and watching police dramas, and she thought she understood what blood looked like in a crisis. She had been completely wrong about that. "Ethan." His eyes opened. His face was pale, not that pale shade of tired she sometimes saw on him after long nights, but the kind of pale that reminded her of old photographs, of people who had already left. "You came," he said. "Of course I came." She crossed the room and took his hand, and she squeezed it hard enough that he winced, and she was grateful for that wince, because it meant he was still here to feel it. "What happened?" "It doesn't matter." "Ethan, it doesn't matter right now." He turned his head and looked at her, and something shifted in his face, something she had not seen in a long time. It looked like fear, not of pain, of something else entirely. "They know where the shop is, Soph." The air went out of her lungs. "What?" "Whoever did this, they did it to send a message, and they mentioned you." He gripped her hand harder. "They mentioned the flower shop on 31st. They know your name." "Why would anyone?" "Because of me." His voice dropped. "Because of who I work for." Sophia closed her eyes for exactly 3 seconds. Then she opened them again because closing them wasn't going to help anything. "Okay," she said. "Okay. So what do we do?" "We don't do anything." His jaw tightened. "I already called it in. Somebody is coming." "Called it in to who?" The door behind her opened before he could answer. She had seen Alexander Moretti exactly 3 times in her life. The first time was at a Moretti family Christmas event 6 years ago that Ethan had dragged her to because she was the only person in his life who could make him look like he had a normal family. Alexander had been across the entire evening, surrounded, always surrounded, and she had noticed him the way you notice a storm system on the horizon. Not close enough to threaten you, just present enough to change the weather. The second time was at a funeral for a man she didn't know, where she had gone to support Ethan and stood at the back of the church in a black dress that was the wrong kind of black for the occasion. Alexander had walked past her on his way out. He hadn't looked at her. She had looked at him. The third time was tonight. He walked into that back room in a dark coat, 2 men flanking him at a distance that looked casual but wasn't, and he took in the room the way people take in information they need to use, not looking at things one at a time, but absorbing all of it simultaneously. The woman working on Ethan, the blood, the metal table, Sophia. He stopped looking at everything else. "You're the sister," he said. She had the sudden strange feeling that she had heard those exact words before tonight, and the realization that they would probably define the rest of her life. "Sophia," she said. "My name is Sophia," Ethan said from the table. "Boss, she doesn't need to be here for—" "She's already here," Alexander said. He said it quietly, not unkindly. "The way you state a fact that has already changed everything." He looked at her for a moment that went on longer than it should have. Then he looked at Ethan. "How bad?" "I'll live," Ethan said. "That wasn't what I asked." The woman in scrubs said without looking up. "2 broken ribs, a deep laceration on the left side, possible internal bruising. He needs rest and antibiotics, and absolutely no physical activity for at least 3 weeks. 3 weeks, Ethan repeated with the tone of a man who considers 3 weeks to be roughly equivalent to 3 years. "And the shop," Alexander said, still looking at Ethan, but somehow managing to direct the question at Sophia. "He said they mentioned it," Sophia said. "He said they know my name." "They do." Alexander's voice was flat, certain, the voice of someone who has already run the numbers and doesn't like the result. "Which means you can't go back there tonight." Sophia stiffened. "I'm sorry, what? The shop isn't safe. Your apartment isn't safe. Not until we figure out who sent the message and what they actually want." "I understand that," she said carefully. "But I'd like to be involved in that conversation, since it's my shop and my apartment, and my name, they apparently know." Ethan made a sound from the table that was somewhere between a groan and a laugh. Alexander looked at her again. Really looked at her this time, the way he'd looked at the room when he first walked in. Like information he needed to process. "Fine," he said. She hadn't expected that. "Fine. You want to be in the conversation. Fine. Then stay close and pay attention, and don't argue with every decision just to prove you can." He turned toward the door. "We leave in 10 minutes. She didn't argue with him on the drive, partly because everything he said in the car was directed at the 2 men in front, and she understood even through the fog of shock and adrenaline that there were things being communicated in that conversation that she wasn't supposed to fully understand. Codes. Names that meant something other than what they sounded like. Locations referred to by numbers. Partly because she was too busy watching him. She had assumed, based on everything Ethan had ever said, and everything she had ever seen from a distance, that Alexander Moretti would be the kind of man who filled a room with noise. With presence so heavy, it became pressure. The men she associated with power. The ones she'd watched at those rare events Ethan brought her to, they all operated that way. Like they needed the whole room to know they were in it. Alexander Moretti sat in the back seat of that car like a man who had nothing to prove. He was quiet. Not tense, quiet. Not dangerous quiet. But the kind of quiet that comes from someone who has been in enough rooms to know that the people who talk the most are almost never the ones actually in charge. He noticed her watching him. She expected him to look away, or to say something dismissive, or to do that thing powerful men did where they acknowledged your attention and then used it as a form of control. Instead, he said, How long has Ethan been working for me? 7 years, she said. He ever bring his work home? Ethan doesn't have a home. She said it before she thought about it, and then she heard herself say it and felt the sting of it. He has an apartment, but he doesn't really live in it. He lives wherever you need him to be. Something moved across Alexander's face. It wasn't guilt exactly. It was something more complicated than guilt. Something that looked like it had been sitting there for a long time. He's the best man I have, Alexander said. I know that. She looked out the window. He knows that too. He's never once complained about it. Is that a problem? It's a fact. She turned back to him. The problem is that you mentioned him being the best man you have, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out if that means you're going to protect him because he matters to you, or because he's useful. The silence that followed that question was the kind that had weight. Both, Alexander said finally. At least you're honest about it. I find honesty more efficient, he said, and then almost to himself, most people find it inconvenient. They took her to a building she would later learn was one of 6 properties Alexander owned in the city under names that weren't his. The apartment was on the 14th floor, and it was spare and clean, and it had the particular quality of a space that someone used for function, never for living. No photographs, no plants. A kitchen with expensive equipment that had never been cooked in. She stood in the middle of the living room and looked at those empty walls and felt for the first time since Ethan's phone call the full weight of what was happening. Her shop was on 31st Street. She had signed the lease on that space at 22 years old with $700 in her savings account and a stubbornness that her mother had called recklessness and her grandmother had called the family trait. She had painted the walls herself. She had carried every shelf up 3 flights of stairs with her best friend Maya because she couldn't afford movers. She had arranged her first window display at 2 in the morning before the opening day because she couldn't sleep from the nerves and the excitement. That shop was not just a business. It was the only thing in her life that was entirely hers. And now someone she had never met knew its address and knew her name, and had used both of them to send a message to her brother. You can use the room at the end of the hall. She turned. Alexander was still in the room. She had thought he had left. Thank you, she said. There's a spare phone on the nightstand. It's clean, can't be traced. You can use it to call whoever you need to call. I need to call Maya. She opens the shop tomorrow morning. Don't tell her not to come in, Alexander said. If you tell her to stay away, she'll ask why, and if she asks why, someone might be listening. Sophia stared at him. So I'm just supposed to let her walk into a situation that might be dangerous. There will be 2 of my people outside the shop by 6 a.m., he said. Nobody is going to get to your friend. You're certain about that? Yes. You said that very fast. Because I am very certain. Something in his face shifted, not softened exactly, but adjusted like a frequency tuning itself. I understand this is not a reassuring situation, Miss Bennett, but I need you to trust that I have managed worse situations than this one, and the people who came at your brother tonight made a mistake. I intend to make them regret it. The way he said it was not a threat. It was a timetable. She sat down on the couch because her legs were done pretending they were fine. Can I ask you something? She said. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just waited. Which she was beginning to understand was his version of permission. Why did you come yourself tonight to the hospital, to wherever that place was? You could have sent someone. He was quiet for a moment. Ethan has been with me for 7 years, he said. When something happens to someone who has been with me for 7 years, I come myself. Is that a policy? It's a choice. She looked up at him. There's a difference. A policy, he said, is something you do because the system requires it. A choice is something you do because you decided it matters. Sophia Bennett, who had spent her entire adult life building a business on the principle that the small things matter when everyone else has decided they don't, looked at Alexander Moretti in that empty apartment and felt something she absolutely did not want to feel. She felt like she understood him. She couldn't sleep. This was not surprising. What was surprising was that at 3:17 in the morning, when she gave up on sleep entirely and walked to the kitchen to find something to drink, She found Alexander already there, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a file folder open in front of him. And he looked up when she came in with the expression of a man who had forgotten for a moment that someone else was in the apartment. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to." "It's fine." He closed the folder, not quickly, casually, but she noticed it. "Can't sleep?" "No." She went to the counter and found the coffee and poured herself a cup because she needed to do something with her hands. "Do you ever sleep?" "When it's necessary." "That's not really how sleep works." "I'm aware." Something that might have been amusement moved through his voice, just barely, just enough to change the texture of the silence. She sat down across from him. She didn't exactly plan to. It was just what her body did. "Tell me about the shop," he said. She blinked. "What?" "Your flower shop. Ethan mentioned it only in passing, only in the context of you being the only person in his life who is completely separate from all of this. But he's mentioned it enough times that I know you've had it for 7 years and that you name the arrangements after songs and that you close on Sundays no matter what, because your grandmother thought Sunday was sacred." Sophia stared at him. "He told you that. Not all at once, over time." He looked at her steadily. "Ethan talks about you the way people talk about the part of their life they're trying to protect. Like if he says your name too loudly, something might find it." Her throat tightened in a way she hadn't expected. "He never told me he did that." "He wouldn't." Alexander wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. "Men like Ethan don't talk about what they're protecting. They just keep standing in front of it." Sophia looked at her coffee. "What about you? What about me? Is there something you stand in front of? Something you're protecting?" He looked at her for a long moment. And in that moment, in the strange 3:17 in the morning stillness of that kitchen, she saw something she had noticed once before very briefly across a room at a Christmas party 6 years ago. Something she had dismissed as a trick of the light, or the angle, or her own imagination. The loneliness behind his eyes. Not the romantic kind. Not the kind that appears in movies and disappears when the right person says the right thing. The real kind. The deep kind. The kind that sets in when someone has spent so many years operating alone that they have genuinely stopped expecting not to be alone. "The organization," he said finally. "The people in it." "That's your answer." "That's my honest answer." His voice was quiet. "What would you prefer I say?" "I don't prefer anything," Sophia said. "I just think that protecting an organization and protecting people inside it are two very different things, and you said both in the same breath, like they were the same." He was quiet for a moment. "You're sharper than I expected," he said. "You expected Ethan's little sister to be decorative." "I expected Ethan's little sister to be afraid of me." "I am afraid of you," she said simply. "I'm also having coffee with you at 3 in the morning, so apparently I'm capable of more than one thing at a time." That thing moved through his voice again, the almost amusement. This time it lasted longer. "What are the arrangements named after?" he asked. "The ones in the shop. Ethan said you named them after songs." She looked at him. She hadn't expected him to remember that, or to come back to it. "It depends on the season," she said. "In the fall, I do a lot of old Motown. There was one last October, amber dahlias and dark red roses, and a little bit of eucalyptus. I called it My Girl." She paused. "It sold out in 2 days." "And right now, what season is it in the shop?" She thought about it. "Late fall going into winter. I've been doing a lot of white and silver. Paper whites, white ranunculus, silver, Dusty Miller. There's one I just designed this week. I haven't named it yet." "What does it look like?" "Stark," she said. "Beautiful, but stark. The kind of beautiful that has a little bit of something painful underneath it." She said it before she thought about it, and then she heard herself say it, and she looked across the kitchen table at Alexander Moretti, and she understood in the kind of immediate and unwelcome way that understanding sometimes arrives that she had not been describing a flower arrangement at all. Alexander understood it too. He looked at her with those tired, careful eyes, and he didn't say anything, and she didn't say anything, and the silence between them was the kind that changes the shape of a room. Then his phone buzzed on the table. He looked at it. Something in his expression went careful in a different way. Professional. "I have to take this," he said. "Of course." He stood. He picked up the phone. He walked out of the kitchen. And Sophia sat alone at the table with her coffee going cold, and the distinct, unsettling, absolute certainty that she had just made a mistake she couldn't take back. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because she had looked at Alexander Moretti across a kitchen table at 3 in the morning and seen a person. That was the mistake. That was always the mistake. The next morning arrived the way bad mornings do, too early, too bright, and carrying news. One of Alexander's men, a quiet, serious man named Carver, who communicated primarily through nods, knocked on her door at 7 and told her in the particular way of people delivering information. They have been instructed to deliver gently that her flower shop had been broken into sometime around 4 in the morning. Nobody had been hurt. Maya had not yet arrived. The 2 men posted outside had found it within minutes. But the interior of the shop, the shelves she had built, the arrangements she had constructed, the display she had spent 3 days designing with white ranunculus and silver dusty miller and paper whites she had named in her head, but not yet out loud, all of it had been destroyed. Carver told her this. She listened to all of it. Then she said, "I need to speak with Alexander." "Mr. Moretti is—" "Now," she said. "Please." I was already on the phone when she found him. He saw her face and ended the call in the middle of a sentence, something that she would learn later. Alexander Moretti essentially never did, and he looked at her with an expression that was already halfway to an apology. "They told you," he said. "They told me." Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly." "Ask." "Was this because of me specifically, because they figured out I matter to Ethan? Or was this just collateral damage? My shop happened to be the convenient thing close enough to hurt." Alexander was quiet for a moment. "Both," he said. She closed her eyes, opened them. "Okay," she said. "Sophia, I'm not done." Her voice was still steady, but there was something under it now. Something that had been compressed by the night and the news and the particular grief of losing something you built with your own hands. "I'm not done. I need you to understand something. That shop isn't just property to me. It isn't a business asset that got caught in a crossfire. I built that shop when I was 22 years old with $700, and I have spent 7 years making it something that matters to people. And someone destroyed it last night to get to you through my brother. So I need to know." Her voice broke slightly the first time. Just slightly. She caught it. "I need to know that you actually intend to find out who did this. Not as an afterthought. Not as a footnote to some other conversation about power and territory. As something that matters." The silence that followed was very long. "It matters," Alexander said. And the way he said it, not forcefully, not as a reassurance, but as a simple certain fact, was the most honest thing anyone had said to her in the last 12 hours. She nodded. She started to turn. "Sophia." She stopped. "I'm going to find out who did this," he said. "And I'm going to fix it." "You can't fix it," she said quietly. "Those arrangements are gone. I can rebuild the shop. I can replace the shelves and the flowers and the display cases. But those specific arrangements, the ones I made, those are gone." He looked at her. "I know," he said. "I know that." And the way he said it, like he understood exactly the difference between fixing a thing and understanding what was lost, made her feel dangerously that she was not alone in that room. Ethan arrived at the apartment at noon. He arrived walking, which was already more than the woman in scrubs had recommended, and he arrived angry, which was even more than that. He came through the door and looked at Sophia and then at Alexander, and he read the room in the way that people who have spent 7 years in survival mode learn to read rooms. "Why is she still here?" he said. "Because she's safer here than anywhere else right now," Alexander said. "She'd be safer if she was 1,000 miles away from you." "Ethan," Sophia started. "No." He turned to her, and his face was the face of her brother, the one who had picked her up from school and helped her with homework, and sat with her through their mother's illness, not the face of whoever he became in this world. Soph, you don't understand what being close to him means. You don't understand what it costs. I understand that someone broke into my shop, she said. I understand that my name was mentioned by people who hurt you. I understand that my proximity to you already put me in this. She met his eyes. I didn't choose to be in it, but I am in it. So standing 1,000 miles away doesn't actually change that, does it? Ethan's jaw worked. She's right, Alexander said. He said it without inflection, like a conclusion. Ethan looked at him. The look on his face was not simple anger. It was the look of a man who sees something happening that he cannot stop and cannot fully name. Don't, Ethan said. Don't what? Don't look at her like that. The air in the room changed. Sophia looked at her brother. Ethan, I know what I'm seeing, Ethan said. His voice was low and careful, and underneath the low and careful was something else, something almost desperate. I've worked for you for 7 years. I know every expression on your face, and I have never seen that one. He pointed a gesture so unlike him that Sophia's breath caught. She is the only person in my life who has nothing to do with any of this. She is the only innocent thing I have left. And I am telling you as the man who has given you 7 years and will give you 7 more. His voice cracked just barely. Don't bring her into your darkness. The silence that followed, that was the heaviest thing in the room. Alexander looked at Ethan for a long moment. She's already in it, he said quietly. That happened last night. Not because of anything I did, because of whoever came after you and chose her as collateral. The question now is not whether she's in it. The question is how we keep her safe while she's in it. Ethan looked at his sister. Sophia looked back. And the thing between them, the thing that had always been between them, the love and the guilt and the distance his choices had put there, moved through the room like weather. I'm not going anywhere, she said softly. I'm going to stay until this is over. And then I'm going to go back and rebuild the shop and my life and everything exactly as it was. She said it firmly. She believed it in the moment that she said it. She just didn't know yet how much everything was about to change. The first real breakthrough came at 2 p.m. Carver knocked on the door of the Sophia had been sitting in, sorting through what she knew and what she didn't know and what she needed to know, and said that Alexander wanted her in the main room. She went. The main room had expanded. There were more people now. Men she didn't know, arranged in the kind of loose alert way that suggested they were not there for decoration. Maps on the table. Phones. Laptops. The organized infrastructure of people who are trying to solve a problem that has a deadline. Alexander was at the center of it, but not the way she might have expected. He wasn't performing authority. He was listening, moving from person to person, absorbing information, asking questions that were short and specific. She watched him work for a full 3 minutes before he noticed her standing near the door. He crossed the room. We have a preliminary picture, he said quietly, stepping away from the group so they could talk without being overheard. The attack on Ethan last night was coordinated. It wasn't random. Somebody targeted him specifically, and that somebody had internal information. They knew his route. They knew his timing. Sophia felt something cold move through her. Internal, she said. As in someone inside the organization gave them what they needed. His voice was flat, controlled. Which means we have a problem that's larger than last night's attack. Someone inside your organization is working against you. Yes. And that person, or those people, also know about me. About the shop. Yes. She took a breath. How many people knew about me before last night? Alexander looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. More than I would have preferred, he said. What does that mean? It means Ethan talks about you more than he thinks he does. He paused. Men who are trying to protect something tend to mention it. They can't help it. The thing they're protecting exists in every conversation they have, even when they're not talking about it directly. Sophia thought about what he had said at 3 a.m. About Ethan talking about her, the way people talk about the part of their life they're trying to protect. So, by protecting me, she said slowly, by making me the thing he kept separate and safe, he inadvertently made me visible. Yes, Alexander said. That's... She stopped. She looked at the floor for a moment. That's almost cruel. That's how it works, he said. The things people love the most become the most visible targets, not because love is weakness, but because people who want to cause pain know exactly where to look. She looked up at him. He was looking at her with that expression again, the one she had seen in the kitchen at 3 in the morning, the one she didn't have a name for yet. I need to ask you something, she said. Ask. The person inside your organization, the one who gave them the information. Do you have any idea who it is? He was quiet for a moment. I have suspicions, he said, but not certainty. Not yet. What do you need to get certainty? He looked at her. Why? Because... She stopped. She took a breath. Because it's my shop they destroyed, and my brother they hurt, and my name that they know. And I'm standing here in your apartment with your people talking around me about my situation, and I would like very much to be part of solving it. Something shifted in him. Something she saw happen in his eyes before it reached his face. That's not a position I generally offer to civilians, he said. I'm not asking for a position. I'm asking you to talk to me like someone who has a stake in what happens next. She held his gaze. Which I do. The silence stretched. Sit down, he said finally. She sat. And Alexander Moretti, who did not generally explain his thinking to anyone outside his innermost circle, sat down across from her and started talking. An hour later, she understood the shape of the problem. Someone had been feeding information to a rival family, the Vanzetti operation based out of Brooklyn, smaller than the Moretti family, but hungry in the particular way of organizations that believe they're owed more than they have. The Vanzettis had been making quiet moves for months. Ethan's attack was not the beginning. It was an escalation. The person feeding them information knew enough to be dangerous. They knew routes, schedules, safe houses. They knew apparently about Sophia. What do you know about the people around you? Sophia asked. Alexander looked at her. In general, everything I need to know. That's not an answer. I mean specifically the people closest to you. The ones who would have access to the kind of detailed operational information that's been getting out. He named 4 people. He named them slowly, the way you name things you don't want to be examining. Sophia listened. Which one of them? She said carefully. Do you trust the most? Carver, he said immediately. And which one? She said. Do you trust the most who isn't Carver? He was quiet for a long time. Marco, he said. Tell me about Marco. He told her. Sophia listened to all of it, the 7 years, the loyalty, the moments of proof, the history. She listened the way she used to listen to her grandmother tell stories, following the thread, not just through what was being said, but through how it was being said. What was emphasized? What was skipped over? When did Marco's behavior change? She said. Alexander stopped. What? You said the loyalty, the history. But the way you're saying it, it sounds like you're describing the past, not the present. When did something shift? He looked at her like she had said something in a language he didn't expect her to speak. 4 months ago, he said. What happened 4 months ago? Nothing, that I know of. Something happened, she said. Something that changed the calculation for him. Something that made whatever he was getting from staying loyal feel less valuable than whatever he'd get from going around you. She paused. You said the Vanzetti situation has been building for months. 4 months. Alexander's expression went very still. Yes, he said. So, she held his gaze. Something happened 4 months ago that either Marco caused or Marco knows about. And the Vanzetti escalation started at the same time. And Marco has been quiet, Alexander said. His voice was different now. Quieter. The kind of quiet that comes right before something breaks. He's been too quiet. I noticed it, and I told myself it was the stress of the last quarter. Because you didn't want it to be him. He looked at her. Yes, he said. Because I didn't want it to be him. Sophia sat with that for a moment. That's human, she said. Not wanting it to be someone you trust. That's not weakness. That's just what it feels like when someone betrays you. It takes longer to see, because you're looking at them through what you already know. He was very still across from her. How do you know that? He said. Because I've been there, she said. Not in your world, but I've been there. She looked at her hands. My first business partner, before the shop. We were going to do something together, a bigger operation, 2 locations, the whole plan. I trusted her completely. I had known her for 5 years. And she pulled out and took the concept and opened her own place 6 months later. She paused. It took me 4 months to see what she was doing while she was doing it, because I was looking at her through what I already knew. Alexander said nothing. The betrayal doesn't hurt because you were stupid, Sophia said. It hurts because you were human enough to trust someone, and they weren't human enough to deserve it. The silence was the long kind again. Thank you, he said. It came out like it cost him something. For what? For saying that like it's true. Because it is true. He looked at her across the table. I'm going to need to move on Marco carefully, he said. If I'm wrong, I lose one of the best people I have. If I'm right. He stopped. If you're right, she said, you stop the bleeding. He nodded. And then, because it was that kind of afternoon, the kind where the ground keeps shifting, and you keep finding your footing, and losing it again. Carver appeared in the doorway, and said, with the carefully neutral expression of a man delivering news, he doesn't want to deliver. There's a car outside. Vanzetti plates. Every person in the room went still. Alexander stood. He looked at Sophia. Go to the back room, he said. Sophia. His voice was not a command. It was something else, something underneath a command. Something that sounded to her own significant alarm, like he actually cared what happened to her. Please. She went. She sat in the back room and listened to the voices she couldn't quite hear through the wall, and she thought about flower arrangements made of stark, beautiful things with something painful underneath. And she thought about a man who hadn't slept and hadn't complained and had answered her questions in the middle of the night like they were worth answering. And she thought about her brother who had spent 7 years standing in front of her name so that no one could find it, and how that had not worked, and how nothing was quite the same shape it had been 24 hours ago. The car outside stayed for 11 minutes. Then it left. Alexander came to the back room. He actually knocked, which she had not expected, and opened the door and looked at her with an expression that was more open than she had seen on him yet. They didn't come to threaten, he said. They came to deliver a message. What message? He handed her a folded piece of paper. She opened it. Written on it in neat handwriting that somehow made it worse. We know what he's protecting now. Tell Moretti to stand down, or the next thing that gets broken won't be a flower shop. Sophia read it twice. Then she folded it very carefully and held it in both hands. They think you care about the shop, she said. They think destroying it hurts you through me. Yes, he said. Do they know that I'm... They think I care about you because Ethan does, he said. They don't know anything else. She looked up at him. But they're right, she said. Aren't they? They're right that hurting what I have is a way to get to you through Ethan. He was quiet for a moment. They were right, he said. Last night. The way he said it were past tense. A correction he applied deliberately made her breath catch. What does that mean? She said. He looked at her, and the thing she had been trying not to see since 3 a.m, since the kitchen, since the coffee, since the flower arrangement she had described without meaning to, since the careful quiet way he had said it, matters was suddenly completely unavoidably visible. He hadn't answered her question. He didn't need to. The silence was the answer. And Sophia Bennett, who had spent her entire life standing safely outside her brother's world, realized she was no longer outside anything. She was in it. All the way in it. And the most terrifying part, the part she sat with as the afternoon light faded and the apartment around her hummed with the quiet machinery of people managing a crisis, was that she wasn't sure she wanted to leave. The note was still in her hands when Alexander made his first real mistake. He reached out and took it from her. Not grabbed it, not snatched it, but took it, the way you take something fragile from someone who has been holding it too long. Carefully. with both hands close to hers for just a second longer than necessary. Sophia felt it. She knew he felt it too. Neither of them said anything about it. He folded the note and put it in his jacket pocket, and that was that, except it wasn't that at all, and they both knew it. "I need to make some calls," he said. "Of course." He left the room. She sat there for a full minute, not moving, just breathing, which was about as much as she could manage. Ethan found her 20 minutes later. He came into the room the way he always came into rooms when he was worried about her fast. Like if he moved quickly enough, he could outrun whatever was already happening. He sat down across from her and looked at her face, and whatever he saw there made his own face do something complicated. "Talk to me," he said. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. I've known you for 29 years, Soph. You do this thing when you're not fine where you get very still and very polite, and you answer every question in exactly 2 words. He leaned forward. "You said I'm fine. That's 2 words. She almost smiled. Almost. "Someone sent a note," she said. "I know. Alex told me. They're going to keep coming at me to get to him. I know that too." His jaw was tight. "Which is why you need to leave. I know you don't want to hear it. I know you think you're tougher than the situation, and maybe you are, but I need you to hear me." "Ethan." Her voice was quiet, but it stopped him cold. "If I leave, does the threat leave with me?" He opened his mouth, closed it. "Does my name get unknown?" she continued. "Does the shop get undestroyed? Does whoever is inside this organization feeding information to the Vanzettis suddenly forget that I exist?" She looked at her brother, really looked at him the way she hadn't done in a long time. Past the careful surface he wore in this world, into the face she knew. "Running doesn't fix this. You know that. You know that better than I do." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "When did you get this stubborn?" he said. "I've always been this stubborn. You just used to be able to redirect me with pizza." This time the almost smile reached him too. He reached out and took her hand, the way he used to when they were kids, and their mother was sick, and the world felt too large for 2 people to manage. He held it for a moment without saying anything. "I don't want him to look at you," Ethan said quietly. "The way he looks at you." "Ethan, I'm not angry at you. I want to be clear about that. I'm angry at the situation. I'm angry that you're here, and that your name got into this, and that I couldn't—" He stopped, pressed his lips together. "I couldn't keep you out of it the way I always said I would." "You kept me out of it for 7 years, she said. "That's not nothing. It's not enough. It was everything you could do." She squeezed his hand. "It was always everything you could do." He looked at her, and the thing that had lived between them for 7 years. The guilt on his side, the careful silence on hers. The love underneath all of it, holding everything together, moved through the room like a current, quiet and strong. "I'm scared," he said, very quietly. "I know," she said. "So am I." That was the moment Alexander appeared in the doorway. He took one look at the 2 of them, at their joined hands, at Ethan's expression, at whatever was on Sophia's face, and he stepped back without entering. "Sorry," he said. "It's your apartment," Sophia said. "Still." He stayed in the doorway. He looked at Ethan. "I need 5 minutes. When you're ready." Ethan nodded. Alexander left, and Sophia watched her brother stand up and straighten his jacket and put back on the face that wasn't the face she knew, and she thought about all the years he had been doing that, putting on the other face, walking back into the other world, and how she had always told herself that was his choice, his life, none of her business. And how the last 24 hours had made that position completely impossible to hold. She was not supposed to hear the conversation. She was in the hallway getting water from the kitchen, and the door to the room where Alexander and Ethan were talking was not quite closed, and she told herself she was going to keep walking. She didn't keep walking. "She's not leaving," Alexander said. "I've looked at the options, and the safest place for her right now is here where I can control the perimeter." "You keep saying that like it's only about safety," Ethan said. Silence. "What else would it be about?" Alexander said. His voice was careful in a way she had learned in 24 hours, meant he was aware of something he wasn't saying out loud. "You know what I'm asking." Ethan's voice was low, controlled, the voice of a man choosing his words the way a surgeon chooses instruments. I've watched you my entire career. I know what it looks like when you're running a calculation, and I know what it looks like when you're not. A pause. Last night you sat with her in the kitchen for 2 hours. Carver mentioned it, not as an accusation, just as a fact. He mentioned it like it was unusual. It was a difficult night. She couldn't sleep. Alex. Another silence. I don't know what you want me to say, Alexander said. I want you to tell me nothing is happening. I want you to tell me she's a problem to be managed and you're managing it. And when this is over, she goes back to her shop and her life, and you don't think about her again. The silence this time was the kind that has a shape, the kind that means the person being asked can't say the thing being asked for. Ethan, Alexander said finally, I haven't done anything. I know you haven't. Ethan's voice dropped further. I know you wouldn't. But that's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about... He stopped, started again. The men who came at us last night know her name. The Vanzettis sent a note about her specifically, which means whoever is feeding them information talked about her. And the only reason they would talk about her is if they thought she mattered. To me, fine, I'm her brother, that makes sense. But if they also think she matters to you, then she becomes twice the target, Alexander said. Yes. Another pause. I know, Alexander said, quieter. So you understand what I'm telling you? I understand. Sophia stood very still in the hallway. I'm asking you, Ethan said, as the only person in this organization who will ever ask you something like this. Keep the line. Not because I don't trust you, because I don't trust what happens to people who get close to you. I've seen it. You know I've seen it. A long silence. I know, Alexander said again. His voice was different now, not quiet in the controlled way, quiet in the other way, the way she had heard in the kitchen. She walked back to her room without the water. She sat on the edge of the bed. She thought, this is the moment to take Ethan's advice. This is the moment to make a decision and stick to it. She sat with that thought for about 4 minutes. Then she thought about the way Alexander had said it matters the night before, and the way he had said were past tense about the threat. And she understood with a clarity that was entirely unwelcome that she had already made her decision. She just hadn't admitted it yet. The next 48 hours moved fast. Alexander's team worked through the night, and Sophia, who had no intention of sitting in a back room being managed, positioned herself at the edge of the operation and watched and listened and asked questions when she had them. And the surprising thing, the thing she had not expected, was that people answered her. Not because Alexander had told them to. Because she had earned it somehow in the way you earn things without meaning to, by being useful, by being present, by not treating the work like it was something happening to her instead of something she was part of. Carver, who communicated primarily through nods, started using full sentences with her by the second morning. A man named Torres, who handled the technical side of things and wore the expression of someone perpetually disappointed by the outside world, showed her the communications intercepts they had pulled without being asked to. This phrase, she said, pointing at a line of text on his screen. It appears 3 times, in 3 different messages. Different words around it each time, but this phrase is the same. Torres looked at where she was pointing. It's a reference point, he said. A location, probably. Or a person, she said. What if it's a name, a nickname? Torres stared at the screen, stared at her. Huh, he said. He pulled up another intercept, found the phrase again. You know, he said, that's actually, yeah. That would actually explain why the spacing is. He was already typing. Where did you learn to read patterns like that? 7 years of custom flower orders, she said. You'd be surprised how often people order the same arrangement with slightly different explanations for why they want it. Torres laughed. It seemed to surprise him that he'd laughed. Sophia turned around and found Alexander standing behind her watching. She didn't know how long he had been there. Torres. Alexander said, pull everything with that phrase and cross-reference it against internal communication logs, specifically anything sent in the last 4 months. Already on it, Torres said. Alexander looked at Sophia. Come with me, he said. They walked to the kitchen. Their kitchen now, she thought, and immediately corrected herself, and he poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if she wanted one, and she sat down without being invited, and they were already doing it again, already falling into the rhythm of 2 people who have spent enough hours in the same space to have a shared language. That was the thing that scared her most. Not the danger, not the note, not the Vanzettis, the rhythm. You found something, he said. Maybe. Torres is running it down. Where did you learn to analyze communication patterns? I didn't. I just looked at it like a problem I knew how to solve. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup. Everything has a pattern. Flowers, people, language. Once you understand that, you can read almost anything. He was watching her the way he had watched her when she was working, with that quality of attention that felt nothing like being observed and everything like being seen. What? She said. Nothing. You're doing the thing where you're thinking something and choosing not to say it. I do that frequently. I know, but right now it's louder than usual. Something moved across his face. Louder. When people are not saying something important, it's louder than the things they are saying. The silence takes up more space. She met his eyes. Whatever you're not saying is taking up a lot of space right now. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I owe you an apology. She hadn't expected that. For what? For not finding the leak before your shop became collateral damage. His voice was flat, but it wasn't flat in the usual way. It was flat the way things get when someone is pressing down hard on them. I knew there was a problem. I knew for weeks that something was getting out. I moved too slowly, and you paid for it. Sophia looked at him. You didn't destroy my shop, she said. No, but I didn't stop the person who did. Those aren't the same thing. They should be, he said. When you're in my position, they should be the same thing. She thought about what Ethan had said, about the cost of being close to Alexander, about what it looked like when something went wrong in his world. Can I tell you something? She said. Yes. You cannot carry every outcome, not in your world, not in any world. She held his gaze. I know that goes against everything your entire life has trained you to believe. I know that in your position, you've convinced yourself that if you're good enough, smart enough, fast enough, nothing goes wrong. But things go wrong, Alexander. They go wrong for everyone. The question is what you do after. He looked at her. You called me Alexander, he said. She realized she had. Not Mr. Moretti. Not the formal distance she had been careful to maintain. Alexander. I did, she said. She didn't take it back. He didn't look away. Nobody calls me that, not anymore. My people call me boss. Business contacts use the last name. The only person who ever called me Alexander was my mother. How long has she been gone? 11 years. I'm sorry. Don't be. She wouldn't have liked what I became. Maybe, Sophia said. Or maybe she would have looked at the parts of you that are still human and decided those were the parts that mattered. He went very still. Why do you do that? He said. Do what? Say the thing that... He stopped. Nobody says the things you say. The people around me have been trained over years to say what they think I want to hear. And the people who used to tell me the truth... He paused. Most of them aren't around anymore. Then they were wrong to leave, she said. And the ones who stayed and started telling you what you want to hear were wrong to do that. You've known me for 48 hours. I know, but I've been watching you for 2 days, and I've been listening to Ethan talk around you for 7 years, and I think I have a pretty clear picture. He looked at her steadily. And what does that picture look like? She took a breath. A man, she said. Just a man. A man who got handed something enormous very young and built walls around it, because that was the only way to hold it. A man who is better at this than almost anyone alive and lonelier than he should be, and absolutely terrified of losing control of anything, because the one time... She stopped. The one time something slipped, something he loved got destroyed, and he hasn't trusted himself to love anything since. The silence after that was the longest one yet. I told you, he said finally. You're sharper than I expected. Stop saying that like it's a surprise. It is a surprise. It shouldn't be. She looked at him steadily. And that says something about you, not me. His jaw tightened slightly. She had gotten to him, she could see it, but he didn't retreat. He sat with it the way she was learning, he sat with things that were true and difficult. Who destroyed it? She said. The thing you loved. Before. He was quiet for a long time. My younger brother, he said finally. He was 17. I was 23 and already running the operation. And I thought I had everything controlled. I thought the walls were high enough. His voice didn't break, but it got very quiet. He got pulled into something I didn't see coming. By the time I found out, it was too late. Is he? He's alive, Alexander said. He's somewhere safe. He's been somewhere safe for 8 years. He doesn't know where I am. I made sure of it. He looked at his coffee. He has a name the Moretti family has never heard. A life I can't see, because if I could see it, they could see it. Sophia felt the full weight of that. She felt it settle on her like something physical. You cut yourself off from your brother, she said softly, to keep him safe. Yes. And you've been... She stopped. You've been carrying that for 8 years. Yes. She looked at him across the table. This man, she thought. This impossible, lonely, careful man who sent his brother away to protect him and has been sitting in a city full of people who fear him with absolutely no one to sit across a kitchen table from. What was his name? She said. He looked at her. Daniel, he said. It was the first time she would realize later that he had said that name out loud in 8 years. Torres knocked on the kitchen doorframe at 4:30 in the afternoon. Got something, he said. They both stood up at the same time. Sophia noticed Alexander was closer to her than he'd been before. Not dramatically, just slightly. And she noticed it the way you notice the weather changing something in the air different from a moment ago. They followed Torres back to the main room. He had pulled up the communications on a larger screen and laid them side by side, 12 intercepts spanning 4 months each, containing the phrase Sophia had flagged. Cross-referenced with internal logs, Torres said. The phrase appears in external communications first, and then within 12 to 24 hours, there's a corresponding internal communication using different language, but the same operational content. He pointed. Here, here, and here. Somebody is translating, Sophia said. Torres looked at her. Exactly. Somebody is getting the external message, understanding what it's asking for, and then pulling the relevant internal information and delivering it. Not a hack, Alexander said. A person. A person with access to both sides, Sophia said. Someone who receives external communication and has the clearance to access what they're asking for internally. That narrows it to 6 people, Alexander said. His voice was controlled, but she could hear something underneath it, the sound of a man running a calculation he doesn't want to be right about. 5, Torres said. I checked times on the log. One of the 6 was in Miami during 2 of the transmission windows. Couldn't have been him. 5, Alexander said. Sophia looked at the screen. She looked at the timestamps. She looked at the intervals. The response time, she said. Between the external message and the internal pull. It's not random. Torres looked at her. Walk me through it, he said. 9 times out of 12, the internal pull happens within 3 hours of the external message. But 3 times it takes closer to 18 hours. She pointed. These 3. What was happening organizationally on those 3 days? Torres pulled up a calendar. Checked. His expression changed. Those 3 days, he said slowly, were days when Alexander was in the building. The room went very quiet. Alexander stood completely still. He works differently when I'm present, he said. The words came out flat, precise. He waits, pulls when I'm not nearby, when there's less chance I'll notice. Which means, Sophia said carefully, he's not just a person with access. He's a person who is conscious of you, who knows how you move, who plans around your presence, Carver said from across the room. That's not 6 people, that's 2. Alexander looked at Carver. Something passed between them. Marco, Carver said, quietly. Or Reyes, Alexander said. Reyes has been with you for 11 years. Marco has been with me for 7. Silence. Run the behavioral log on both, Alexander said. Last 4 months. I want to know every meeting, every movement, every communication. That's going to take. Then start now, Alexander said. Not loudly. He never did anything loudly. But the room responded the way rooms respond to absolute authority, which is instantly and completely. He turned to Sophia. She looked back at him. Good eye, he said. Good pattern, she said. It wasn't the right time for any of it. She knew that. He knew that. They were standing in a room full of people in the middle of a crisis, and the traitor was somewhere in his organization, and the Vanzettis had sent a note about her specifically. And still the air between them was doing that thing again. Carver very deliberately looked at the ceiling. Torres very deliberately looked at his screen. Alexander took a small step back. I'm going to need everyone working through the night, he said to the room. To no one in particular, to everyone except her. She found Ethan at 7 in the evening sitting alone in one of the side rooms with the kind of careful stillness that meant his ribs were hurting more than he was admitting. You should be lying down, she said. Probably. He didn't move. You find anything? Maybe. Torres is running it down. Marco, he said. She looked at him. What makes you say that? Because I've watched him for 4 months. Ethan's voice was quiet. Something changed with Marco 4 months ago. I noticed it. I didn't say anything because I don't know. Because I wasn't certain. Because being wrong about something like that. He stopped. In this world, accusing someone of betrayal and being wrong doesn't go well. What changed about him? Ethan thought about it. He stopped pushing back. Marco used to argue. Not loudly, not disrespectfully, but he had opinions, and he'd share them. 4 months ago, he just stopped. Started agreeing with everything. Started being easier to manage. That's not loyalty, Sophia said. That's someone who has already made a decision and is managing their own exit. Ethan looked at her. When did you get so good at people? He said. I've always been good at people. You just never brought me to work. He half laughed, winced, pressed his hand to his ribs. Hey. She sat beside him. What are you going to do after this is over? Whatever after looks like. He was quiet for a moment. I don't know, he said. I've been doing this for 7 years. I don't know what the other version of my life looks like anymore. It looks like whatever you build, she said. Same way the shop did. You start with nothing, and you build something, and it becomes yours. He looked at her. Is that what you're doing right now, building something? She understood what he was asking. Ethan. I'm not going to be angry, he said. I said what I said to him, and I meant it, and I also know. He stopped. I know you. I know that look on your face. I've been watching it for 2 days and trying to pretend I'm not. She didn't answer for a moment. Nothing has happened, she said. I know. And even if... She stopped. Even if something were, I wouldn't make a decision like that without... Soph. He put his hand on hers. I know. I know you. That's not what I'm worried about. He looked at her. I'm worried because I know him too. And I know that what you see in him right now, the part of him that's real, that's actually there, that part is real. I'm not saying it isn't. He paused. I'm saying the rest of it is real too. And the rest of it is dangerous in ways that... He stopped again. In ways you've seen, she said. Yes. She sat with that. I know, she said finally. I know that. Okay. He squeezed her hand. Then just keep knowing it, while you're also knowing everything else. She leaned her head on his shoulder the way she used to when they were teenagers, and everything felt too large. I'll keep knowing it, she said. The break came at 11:17 that night. Torres found her first. She was in the kitchen naturally, which had become the place she went when she couldn't sit still, and he came in moving faster than she had ever seen him move. Get Alexander, he said. What is it? We found the transmission window. All 12 intercepts. I know the exact location they were sent from. He stopped to breathe. It's inside this building. She was already moving. Alexander was in the main room when she found him. She didn't stop moving to explain, she just said, Torres now. and turned and he followed her without asking a single question, which told her everything about how much had changed in 48 hours. Torres laid it out in under 3 minutes. The transmissions, the location, the signal trace that put every single external communication within 200 meters of this building. From inside the perimeter, Alexander controlled. Alexander stood very still through all of it. When Torres finished, the room was completely silent. "Where is Marco right now?" Alexander said. Carver checked his phone. "He left the building at 6. He's not on scheduled rotation until morning." "And Reyes?" "Here. He's been here all evening." Everyone in the room made the same calculation at the same time. She could see it happening on each face. Alexander looked at Carver. "Find him," he said. 2 words, quiet as everything. Carver was already on his phone. Alexander turned and looked at Sophia. He looked at her the way he had looked at her the very first time, taking in the room all of it at once, except this time, she was the whole room. "You should have gone home 2 days ago," he said. Not as an accusation. As a fact he was only now allowing himself to say. "Probably," she said. "You found the pattern." Torres ran it down. "You found it." He looked at her steadily. "If you hadn't been here, I was here," she said. "That's the only thing that matters." His jaw tightened slightly. "Sophia." He said her name the way she had said his, without the formal distance, without the title, just the word itself. "When this is over." His phone rang. He looked at it. Carver's name on the screen. He answered, listened for exactly 4 seconds. His expression shifted not much, but she saw it. She was learning to read the small shifts. "Don't move," he said into the phone. "I'm coming." He looked at her. "Stay here," he said. "Alexander. Please." That word again. The one that cost him something. "Just please stay here." She stayed. She stood in that room with Torres and 2 other men she didn't know, and she listened to the building around her. The sounds of footsteps. A door. Voices too far away to hear clearly. And she thought about everything that had happened in 48 hours, and how none of it had gone the way any of it was supposed to go. She thought about Ethan saying, "Don't bring her into your darkness." She thought about Alexander saying she's already in it. She thought about the kitchen at 3 in the morning, and the coffee and the flower arrangement she had described without meaning to. She thought about a younger brother named Daniel, who was living somewhere safe under a name nobody knew, and the man who had sent him there and hadn't stopped paying for it since. She stood very still, and she waited, and she was not afraid of the waiting. That more than anything else that had happened in 2 days told her exactly where she was. She was in it, all the way in. And the man who had walked out of this room to go handle the consequences of a betrayal by someone he had trusted for 7 years, that man was not a monster. He was a person. She had known it the first night, and she had been trying not to know it ever since. She wasn't going to try anymore. The door at the end of the hall opened. Alexander came back. He looked at her from across the room. "It was Marco," he said. She nodded. She had known. "Is everyone?" "Yes." He came closer. Not all the way across the room. Just closer. "It's not over. Marco isn't the top of this, he's the conduit. The Vanzettis have had their hooks in him for months, and we still need to find exactly what they have and who else they've gotten to." "But it's a start," she said. "It's a start." They looked at each other. "What you said earlier," he said. "When this is over." "You got a phone call." "I know." He held her gaze. "I'm finishing the thought." She waited. "When this is over," he said, "I'm going to ask you something, and I'd like you to think about it before you answer." "What are you going to ask me?" He was quiet for a moment. "I don't know yet," he said, "but it's going to matter." She looked at him. "Okay," she said. The word sat between them, small and certain, and loaded with everything neither of them had said. "Okay," he repeated. And for the first time in 48 hours, in the middle of a crisis that was far from over, with a traitor in custody and a rival family still circling, and her brother 2 rooms away with 2 broken ribs. Sophia Bennett felt something she hadn't expected to feel. She felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. That terrified her more than any of the rest of it. And she wouldn't have changed it for anything. Marco didn't break easily. Sophia heard that secondhand from Carver, who delivered information the way he delivered everything directly and without decoration. Marco had been with Alexander for 7 years. He knew how interrogations worked. He knew what to say and what not to say, and how long to hold silence before saying anything at all. What Carver didn't say, but what she understood from the way he said everything else, was that it was taking longer than Alexander had expected. And Alexander not getting what he needed quickly was the kind of problem that had weight. She went to Ethan. "How bad is it?" she said. Ethan was sitting up now, which was more than he should have been doing, and his face was the careful face, the one she'd stopped being fooled by. Marco knows where the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively. Getting him to talk means getting him to believe that talking is safer than staying quiet. And is it? Depends on how scared he is of the Vanzettis versus how scared he is of Alexander. He looked at her. Right now, I think he's more scared of the Vanzettis, which means we have a problem. Why would he be more scared of them? Alexander has him. Because Alexander has him in a room, Ethan said quietly. The Vanzettis have something else. She understood immediately. They have leverage on him, something personal. That's what Alex thinks, which is why Marco isn't talking. Because whatever they're holding over him, he believes they'll use it if he opens his mouth. Sophia sat with that for a moment. What kind of leverage? She said. Ethan shook his head. We don't know yet. That's the problem. She stood up. Where are you going? Ethan said. To think, she said. She went to the kitchen. She had been sitting there for 20 minutes turning it over when Alexander came in. He looked like a man who had been awake for 3 days, which was not far from accurate. But there was something else on his face tonight, something tighter than exhaustion, something that looked like it was costing him more than it should have. He sat down without saying anything. She slid the coffee toward him. He took it. He's not talking, she said. No. Because they have something on him. Alexander looked at her. Carver told you. Ethan told me, and I figured the rest. She studied him. You already know what it is, don't you? He was quiet for a moment. A long moment. His daughter, he said. The words landed like something physical. He has a daughter, Alexander said. She's 8. Her mother, Marco's ex, moved to Chicago 2 years ago. Marco sees her every other month. He'd do anything to protect her. He set down the coffee. The Vanzettis found her. They haven't touched her. But they've made it clear they know exactly where she is, and exactly what school she goes to, and exactly what time she walks out the front door every afternoon. Sophia felt something cold move through her. So he's not protecting himself, she said. No. He's protecting his daughter. Yes. She looked at Alexander. That's not the same thing as loyalty to them. That's a man who got cornered. I know that. Do you? He looked at her. Yes, he said. I know the difference. I've known Marco for 7 years. I know what kind of man he is, what kind of man he was. He pressed his hand flat on the table, a gesture she hadn't seen from him before, something that looked almost like frustration. They found the one thing he couldn't say no to, and they used it. And now I have a man who fed them everything they needed to hurt my operation, and hurt your brother, and destroy your shop. And I am simultaneously furious at him and he stopped. And you understand him, she said quietly. He didn't answer, but he didn't look away either. You sent Daniel away for the same reason, she said. To protect him. If someone had found Daniel and threatened him the way the Vanzettis found Marco's daughter, you'd have done the same thing Marco did. I would never. You would, she said, not harshly, just clearly. Not happily, not willingly. But if someone had your brother's life on one side of the scale and everything else on the other, you'd move heaven and earth to protect him. You know you would. The silence was very long. So what do I do? He said. It came out different from everything else he'd said in 3 days. Not as a calculation, not as strategy. as a real question from a real person who was genuinely asking. "You take away their leverage," she said. He looked at her. "The little girl," Sophia said. "Get her somewhere safe. Get her mother somewhere safe. Take away the thing they're holding over him and then go back and talk to Marco again." She held his gaze, not as his boss, as someone who understands what it cost him. Alexander was very still. "That's not how this is supposed to work," he said. "I know. In my world, betrayal. I know how it works in your world," she said. "I'm telling you that in this specific case, with this specific man, the standard approach is going to get you nothing, because he is not protecting himself. And people who are protecting someone they love will go to the wall before they give that up." She paused. "The only thing that breaks that is if you protect the thing they're protecting. Then they don't have to." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood up and picked up his phone and made a call. She didn't hear all of it. He walked to the other side of the room and she heard him give a name. Not Marco's daughter's name. She noticed he gave her a code name, which told her everything about how fast his mind moved, and a city, and a brief set of instructions that were delivered with the precision of someone who had run this kind of operation before. When he came back to the table, something in his face had shifted. "It'll take 6 hours," he said. "Then you talk to him in 6 hours," she said. He sat back down. He didn't pick up the coffee. He just sat there, and the kitchen was very quiet, and outside the city was doing what cities do at 2 in the morning, humming with the particular frequency of 10 million people living their lives inside the same small hours. "You're changing how I do things," he said. "Good things can change how people do things." "It's not efficient." "It's more efficient than staying stuck," she said. "A man who won't talk won't talk. A man whose reason for staying quiet disappears, that's a different conversation." He looked at her across the table. "You know what the worst part is?" he said. "Tell me." "I had this same thought. 2 hours ago. I had exactly this thought and I dismissed it because it felt too—" He stopped. "Too human," she said. "Too soft," he said. "Those aren't the same thing. In my world, they feel the same." "Then your world has been teaching you the wrong things," she said. And then more quietly, "For a very long time." He looked at her with an expression she was starting to know. The one that appeared when she said something true and direct, and he didn't have a wall ready to put in front of it. "Sophia," he said. "Alexander. I need to ask you something." "Ask. When this is over." He stopped. Started again. "I said I was going to ask you something when this was over. I keep starting that sentence and getting interrupted." "Then finish it now," she said. He was quiet. "Stay," he said. Just that. One word. She felt it move through her, the way weather moves through a room when someone opens a window, sudden and complete and changing the temperature of everything. "Stay," she repeated. "Not because you're in danger. Not because it's the tactical decision. Because—" He stopped. Looked at his hands. This man who never looked anywhere but directly forward looked at his hands. "Because the last 3 days have been the first time in 8 years that I've had someone in this kitchen who said true things, and I don't want to go back to the other version." Sophia Bennett, who had built her life on knowing exactly what things were worth and exactly what they cost, sat across from Alexander Moretti at 2 in the morning and understood with complete and terrifying clarity that this was the moment. This was the exact moment that things became irreversible. She said, "I'm not going anywhere." He looked up. "Not tonight," she said. "And we'll figure out the rest after." It wasn't everything. She knew that. He knew that. But the way his shoulders shifted barely just slightly told her it was enough for right now. And right now was all either of them had. The 6 hours passed the way 6 hours pass when everyone in a building is running on adrenaline and bad coffee, and the particular focus of people who have a problem they can almost solve. Torres found 3 more things in the communication logs. 2 of them were minor. 1 of them was not. He brought it to Alexander and Sophia together, which said something about how the last 3 days had rearranged the understanding of who was in the room. "There's a secondary channel," Torres said. Outside the main intercepts. Smaller, less frequent, different encryption. I almost missed it. He pulled it up. 11 messages over 4 months. But the content, he looked at Alexander. The content is different from everything else. It's not operational. It's personal. Alexander looked at the screen. He went very still. That's not Marco's ID, he said. No, Torres said. Then whose is it? Torres hesitated. Which for a man who communicated primarily through data and never hesitated was enough of an answer. Torres, Alexander said. Quiet. Exact. Torres pulled up the trace. The ID on the secondary channel belonged to a communication device registered 8 months ago to a name. Alexander didn't recognize, which meant nothing. Names were always fictions in this world, but the device's physical location log placed it consistently in one area. This building. Not in Marco's area of the building. In Alexander's. The room was very quiet. That's not possible, Carver said. It's the log, Torres said. I've checked it 4 times. Who has access to that floor? Alexander said. Carver listed 5 people. His own name was on the list. So was Reyes. So were 2 others. And then he stopped. That's only 4, Sophia said. Everyone looked at her. You listed 4, she said. You said 5 people have access. Carver looked at the floor. The kind of silence that comes before something breaks settled over the room like a held breath. The 5th person, she said carefully. Who is it? Carver looked at Alexander. Alexander was looking at the screen. At the location log. At the building layout Torres had pulled up alongside it. My office, Alexander said. His voice was completely flat. The device was in range of my office. Multiple times, Torres confirmed. At irregular intervals, which means they weren't stationed near my office. They were visiting it. Alexander turned around, looked at the room, at the people in it. Who has walked into my office in the last 4 months that shouldn't have been there? Nobody spoke. Anyone, he said, not loudly. Anyone who has been in that office without an explicit reason. I need names. Carver said Reyes was there last month to drop off a file. I asked him to. Torres and I were both there for the meeting 6 weeks ago. I know. And? Carver stopped. And? Alexander repeated. The night of the 19th, Carver said. I wasn't there, but I pulled the entry log this morning for a different reason, and I noticed someone was in the building after hours. The entry is logged under a temporary code, the kind we issue for visitors. What visitor was in this building on the 19th? Carver looked at Sophia. She felt it before she understood it, a cold, prickling awareness moving up from her stomach. We didn't have any official visitors on the 19th, Carver said. But someone entered using a temporary code that was issued to... He stopped. Say it, Alexander said. It was issued 3 years ago, Carver said. When we were vetting someone, a potential associate. He was given temporary access for 1 meeting, and the code was supposed to be revoked. He met Alexander's eyes. It wasn't revoked. Who was the associate? Carver said a name. Alexander closed his eyes. It was the first time Sophia had seen him do that. Just for a second. Just long enough for something that was usually contained to reach the surface. Then he opened them. Get me Reyes, he said. Reyes came in looking like a man who already knew what was coming. Sophia had thought watching him walk into the room that she would see guilt, or fear, or the particular scrambling quality of someone who had been caught and was trying to calculate their way out. She didn't see any of that. What she saw was exhaustion. A man who had been carrying something too heavy for too long and had reached the point where being caught almost felt like relief. Sit down, Reyes, Alexander said. Reyes sat. 11 years, Alexander said. Just those 2 words. Reyes looked at him. I know, Reyes said. 11 years, and you're going to make me ask you to explain. You already know. I want to hear it from you. Reyes was quiet for a moment. Then he started talking. It came out the way things do when they have been held too long, not cleanly, not in order, but in the shape of the thing itself. He had been approached 14 months ago. Not by the Vanzettis, by someone above the Vanzettis. Someone they both knew but hadn't thought about in years. Someone who had been quiet and patient and building something in the background that neither of them had noticed. He named the name. Alexander didn't react visibly. But Sophia, who had spent 3 days learning the language of his silences, heard the difference in this one. "He came to you 14 months ago," Alexander said. "Yes." "And you said yes." "I said..." Reyes stopped. "I said I'd think about it. And then 3 months later I said yes." "What changed in 3 months?" Reyes looked at the table. "He showed me something. Evidence. About what happened to the DeLuca operation 6 years ago." He paused. "What we did. What you authorized." The air in the room changed. Sophia looked at Alexander. His expression hadn't moved, but something behind it had. "I told you about the DeLuca situation," Alexander said. "You told me some of it," Reyes said. "He showed me the rest. And you decided that was reason enough." "I decided." Reyes's voice cracked slightly. Just slightly. "I decided I'd spent 11 years telling myself you were different from what everyone said. That you had limits. That there were lines." He looked up at Alexander. "And then I saw the DeLuca file, and I understood that the lines I thought were there weren't where I thought they were." The room was very quiet. "So you didn't do it for money," Alexander said. "No." "Or leverage?" "No. You did it because you stopped believing I was worth staying for." Reyes looked at him. "Yes," he said. Alexander was quiet for a long time. "The DeLuca situation," he said finally, "was not what the file says it was." "Then what was it?" "It was a choice I made to protect 6 people by sacrificing one, and the one I sacrificed." He stopped. Made it easier to frame it the way it was framed, because he wasn't someone anyone was going to ask questions about. "That's still a choice," Reyes said. "Yes," Alexander said. "It is. I'm not telling you it wasn't. I'm telling you it wasn't what the file says, and the person who showed you that file knew exactly how to frame it to make you walk away." Reyes stared at him. "He manipulated you," Sophia said. Every person in the room looked at her. She held Reyes's gaze. "Whoever showed you that file knew that you had a line. They found where it was, and they built the story to land exactly on it. Not because the truth was clear, but because they needed you to believe it was." She paused. "You've been working for Alexander for 11 years. Did it feel in 11 years like the man you worked for was the man in that file?" Reyes was very still. "No," he said, quietly. "But by the time they showed it to you, you'd already been sitting with doubts for 3 months, so it landed on fertile ground." She kept her voice even. "That's not your instincts working. That's someone else's engineering working on you." Reyes looked at Alexander. Alexander said nothing. Reyes closed his eyes. "I didn't think about it that way," he said. "I know," Sophia said. "That's the point." It took another hour to get everything out of Reyes. Not the resistance kind of hour. Reyes had already made the decision to talk, and once that decision was made, he was methodical about it. 14 months of information contacts, what he'd passed and what he hadn't, who had approached him, and when and how. The name that came out of it, the name above the Vanzettis, the person who had engineered the entire thing, was a name Alexander recognized. When Carver said it out loud, Alexander turned and walked out of the room. Sophia followed him. She found him in the hallway standing still, and she stood next to him without saying anything for a moment, because she had learned in 3 days that there were times when being near him was more useful than speaking. "Vincent Caruso," he said finally. "You know him. I've known him for 20 years. He was my father's right hand before my father died." He kept his voice very controlled. "When I took over, he stayed on, for 2 years, and then he left. And I thought..." He stopped. "I thought he left because he disagreed with how I was running things. I thought it was about strategy. But it wasn't. It was about position," Alexander said. He thought he should have inherited the operation when my father died. He thought I was too young, too different, and I took over instead. His jaw was tight. He's been building toward this for 6 years. The Vanzettis are just his instrument. This entire thing, the attack on Ethan, your shop, Marco Reyes, it was all aimed at me. At bringing you down, she said. At making me look weak, he said. At showing the rest of the city that Alexander Moretti can be broken, that his operation has cracks, that someone who knew him when he was nobody can still reach inside and damage him. He turned to look at her. And he almost did it. He found the cracks. He knew exactly where to look. She looked back at him. He found out about me, she said. That's the crack he used most. Yes. Because Ethan talked about me. Because I let him believe you were... He stopped. She waited. Because somewhere in the last year, he said carefully, I started asking Ethan questions about you. Small questions. Nothing significant. But I asked them. And I asked them in rooms where other people were present, and I didn't think... He stopped again. I didn't think it would matter. I didn't think it said anything that could be used. Sophia felt the ground shift slightly under her. You were asking about me, she said, before any of this. Yes. For a year. Yes. She stood with that. Why? She said. He was quiet for a moment. Because Ethan loved you, he said. And I trusted Ethan's judgment more than anyone else's. And He stopped. I was curious about the person who made him believe the world was still worth something. She felt something move through her chest that she didn't have a word for. And Caruso saw that, she said. Apparently. He saw you asking questions, and he understood what it meant before you did. Alexander looked at her. Yes, he said. She stopped. That's actually terrifying. Yes, he said again. And now he knows I'm here. Yes. Which means, he said that the threat to you is not smaller than it was 3 days ago. It's larger, because the person behind it isn't the Vanzettis. It's someone who has been planning this for 6 years and is not going to stop because we caught Marco or got Reyes to talk. She processed that. So what's the move? She said. I need to bring him into the open, Alexander said. I need to force him to come to me directly on ground I control before he finds another way to use you. Force him how? He looked at her. She understood what he wasn't saying before he said it. No, she said. Sophia. If you're thinking about using me as bait. I'm not, he said. I would never. He stopped. His voice was sharp in a way she hadn't heard before. Not with her. I would never put you in that position. That is not what I'm suggesting. Then what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that Caruso is watching me. He's watching this building. He's waiting to see what I do next. And what I need to do is make him believe that I'm rattled. That finding the leak rattled me. That I'm making decisions from a defensive position. He held her gaze. Which means I need to make a move that looks reactive, but isn't. A trap, she said. Yes. But you'd need him to believe it. Yes. She thought about it. Reyes, she said. Alexander looked at her. Reyes can still communicate with him, she said. Caruso doesn't know Reyes has given you everything. If Reyes reaches out still playing his role and tells Caruso that things are falling apart here, that you're scared, that there's an opportunity. Caruso comes out, Alexander said. Or send someone who can lead you back to him, she said. Either way you get movement, and movement is what you need. He was very still. You think like a strategist, he said. I think like a woman who has run a small business for 7 years and has been underbid and undercut and lied to by vendors and competitors, and I've had to outmaneuver every single one of them with less money and less power and more patience. She met his eyes. You don't have to be dangerous to think strategically. He looked at her with the expression she had stopped trying to catalog. No, he said quietly. You just have to be smart. Her phone rang. She looked at it. Maya. Her heart did something small and painful. She had called Maya 2 days ago briefly and told her to stay away from the shop without explaining why. And Maya, who had known Sophia for 15 years and understood when not to ask questions, had listened. But it had been 2 days. "I have to take this," she said. "Of course," she answered. "Soph?" Maya's voice came through fast and tight. "I went to the shop." "Maya, I told you. I know what you told me. I went anyway because I'm your best friend and I needed to see it." Her voice cracked slightly. "Sophia." "Oh, honey." Sophia closed her eyes. "I know," she said. "The window displays, your grandmother's vases, everything." Maya stopped. "Who did this?" "I can't tell you right now. I will when I can." "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Are you with—" Maya paused. "Are you with Ethan?" "Yes," she said. "Technically true." "Okay." A breath. "Okay. I'm going to start cleaning it up. I'm going to start making a list of everything we need to replace. Because that shop is coming back and I need something to do." Sophia felt something crack slightly in her chest. "Thank you," she said. "Maya." "Don't thank me. Just come back." Maya's voice was fierce and soft at the same time, the way it got when she was trying not to cry. "Come back and we'll fix it together. The way we always do." "I will," Sophia said. "I promise." She hung up. She stood in the hallway for a moment with the phone in her hand. Alexander hadn't moved. He had given her the space of the conversation, but he hadn't gone anywhere. "Your friend," he said. "My best friend. She's at the shop." She stopped. "What she described?" "I know." His voice was quiet. "Sophia, I meant what I said 3 days ago. I'm going to make it right." "I know you will," she said. And the strange thing, the thing that would have seemed impossible 4 days ago, was that she meant it. The Reyes operation moved faster than any of them expected. Reyes made contact at noon the next day. By 2 in the afternoon, a response had come back. By 4, they had an address. Not Caruso himself, he was too careful for that, too experienced. But one of his people. Someone close enough to matter. Someone who, if brought in and handled correctly, could give them the next step. Sophia was in the main room when Alexander got the address. She watched him read it, watched him look up, watched him make the calculation. "It's a setup," she said. He looked at her. "You said Caruso has been planning this for 6 years, she said. "He's not going to respond to a bait with something real. He's going to respond with something that looks real. He wants you to go to that address." The room was very still. "She's right," Carver said. "I know she's right," Alexander said. "Then we don't go," Carver said. "We can't not go," Alexander said. "If we don't move on this, he knows Reyes has been turned, and then we've burned the only channel we have." He set down the paper. "We go, but we don't go the way he expects." "He'll have people waiting," Carver said. "Then we have more people waiting," Alexander said. "And we know it's a setup, which means we're not walking in blind. We're walking in ready." He looked around the room. 2 teams. One goes to the address. The other covers every exit point within 6 blocks. And nobody moves until I say so. He looked at Sophia. She knew what was coming. "I need you to stay here," he said. "Alexander, this is not negotiable." His voice was still quiet, but it had a different quality now. Something underneath the control that sounded almost desperate. "I need to know you're here. I need to know exactly where you are, and that there are people with you I trust. Not because you can't handle yourself. Because I cannot." He stopped. "Because I need to know." She looked at him. She understood what he wasn't saying. The same thing he hadn't been able to finish in the hallway. She understood the cost of that almost sentence. "Okay," she said. "I'll be back in—" "Alexander." She stepped toward him, just 1 step. "Be careful." He looked at her. "That's the first time you've said that to me," he said. "I know." He stood very still for a moment. Then Carver said, "Boss." And the moment broke, and Alexander walked toward the door, and the operation moved out with him, and the apartment went very quiet. Ethan appeared beside her. She hadn't heard him come in. "He's going to be fine," Ethan said. "I know," she said. "You don't look like you know." "I know it up here." She pressed 2 fingers to her temple. "The other part is still catching up." Ethan was quiet for a second. Then he said, "He's never once in 7 years asked me to tell him when he'll be back. He just goes." He paused. "Tonight, when he was briefing the teams, he told Carver to check in with you every 30 minutes. Sophia looked at her brother. "Every 30 minutes, Ethan repeated. "Because he needed to know you'd be updated." She didn't say anything. "I'm not telling you that as a warning," Ethan said. "I think I'm done with warnings." He looked at her. "I'm telling you because you should know what you are to him, so you can make decisions with the whole picture." She looked at her brother, at the 7 years in his face, at the cost of it, at the love underneath all of it that had never once wavered. "I love you," she said. "I know." He put his arm around her. "I love you too, even when you're completely terrifying." She leaned into him. "Every 30 minutes, she said. "Every 30 minutes, he confirmed. She stood in the apartment with her brother and waited. Carver checked in at the first 30-minute mark. Nothing yet. At 60 minutes, he called again. Movement at the address. Alexander's team in position. The counter team covering exits. At 90 minutes, 3 things happened at once. Carver's call came in differently, tighter, faster. Something had moved before they expected it to. The setup was more elaborate than they'd thought. There were more people at the address than the intelligence suggested, which meant Caruso had fed them partial information on purpose, and the partial information was designed to underprepare them. The second thing. Torres, who had stayed behind to monitor communications, picked up a transmission that shouldn't have been happening. An outgoing signal from inside the building. The third thing, Sophia looked up from the phone call with Carver and saw that Ethan was no longer in the room. "Ethan," she called. Nothing. She moved fast through the apartment, checked the kitchen, the hallway, the room he'd been using. She found his jacket on the floor by the side entrance. She found the side entrance unlocked. And she understood with the sick clarity of someone who has just put 2 pieces together. They didn't want to put together exactly what her brother had done. He had gone. Not away from the situation. Toward it. Ethan, with 2 broken ribs and a week's worth of recovery still ahead of him, had gone to back up his boss. She grabbed the phone, called Carver. "Ethan's not here," she said the moment he picked up. "He left. He's coming to you." Carver said something she couldn't fully hear over the noise in the background. Then she heard in the background very clearly a single sound, a gunshot. Then Carver's voice came back, "Get down." She did to her or to someone there. She stood in that apartment with the phone in her hand and everything in her life balanced on the next 60 seconds. The transmission Torres had flagged, the unlocked door, the gunshot. And then before she could process any of it, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. 3 words. "Come outside. Alone." She stared at the screen. Torres was looking at her from across the room. He had seen it over her shoulder. "Don't," he said. She looked at the door. She looked at the phone. She thought about what Alexander had said, "I need to know you're here." She thought about what Caruso had been doing for 6 years. Patient, methodical waiting for exactly the moment when someone would make an emotional decision instead of a strategic one. She thought about her grandmother, who used to say that the bravest thing a woman could do was know the difference between courage and being used by someone who needed you to be brave. She put the phone down. "Track the number," she said to Torres. He was already doing it. "And get me Alexander," she said. "Right now." The longest 40 seconds of her life passed. Then Alexander's voice came through. "Sophia." Immediate, tight, alive. "I'm okay," she said. "But someone just texted me. Unknown number, 3 words. And Ethan's gone, he came to you." "I know, he's here, he's fine." A breath. "The text, is it still on your phone?" "Yes." "Don't respond, don't move." Torres. "Already tracing," Torres said. Silence on the line. Then Torres said from his screen, "Got it." He said an address. Alexander repeated it on his end to someone. She heard in the background the particular sound of a decision being made. "This is him," Alexander said. Not into the phone to whoever was with him. "This is Caruso pulling back the curtain. He wants us at that address." A pause. "He wants her to come to him, because he's figured out that's the one thing that would bring me running." Sophia stood very still. "He's right," she said into the phone. "I know he's right." Alexander's voice was tight and exact, and underneath all of it was the thing he couldn't say in front of his people. "Which is exactly why I'm not letting you near that address, and why I'm going myself." Alexander. Sophia. His voice dropped. The people around him fell away. Just his voice. Just her name. "Trust me. For the next hour. Trust me." She gripped the phone. 1 hour. "Hour," she said. 1 hour, he said. She stayed. The hour Alexander asked for became 90 minutes. Sophia counted every one of them. Torres gave her updates every 10 minutes, which she had not asked for, and he had not been instructed to give, which told her everything about how the atmosphere in the apartment had shifted over the last 4 days. She was no longer a civilian being managed. She was someone the people in this operation had quietly, without discussion, decided to keep informed. At the 70-minute mark, Torres said, "Teams at the secondary address. No engagement yet." At 80 minutes, "Movement inside. Alexander's people have a perimeter." At 88 minutes, Torres went quiet in the way that meant something was happening that he wasn't ready to report yet. Sophia stood exactly where she was and did not move and did not speak, and breathed very carefully the way her grandmother had taught her to breathe during hard things, slow in, slow out. Keep the body calm so the mind can work. At 93 minutes, her phone rang. "Ethan." "We're okay," he said before she could say anything. His voice was ragged but present, alive and present. "Soph, we're okay." She sat down. Her legs had apparently been waiting for permission. "What happened?" she managed. "Caruso had 6 people at that address. Alex had 12. It wasn't close." He paused. "Caruso himself wasn't there. He sent a representative. Someone senior enough to matter, but not himself. So he's still out there." "He's still out there, but we have his man, and his man—" Ethan stopped. "His man is not as committed to the cause as Caruso probably thought he was." "He's talking. He started talking in the car," Ethan said. "Didn't even wait to be asked." A short, exhausted sound that was almost a laugh. "Turns out not everyone who works for Vincent Caruso is as dedicated as Vincent Caruso." "And Caruso, where is he?" "That's the question." Ethan's voice shifted. "Alex thinks he's going to run. That the representative was the last card he had in the city, and now that we have him, Caruso is going to cut his losses and disappear." Sophia thought about that. "Is that good or bad?" "It's complicated," Ethan said. "A man who runs is a man who isn't coming at you anymore. But a man who disappears is a man who can come back later when you're less ready." She understood. "Alexander wants him brought in." "Alexander wants it finished," Ethan said. "Which is not exactly the same thing." A pause. "When are you coming back?" she said. 20 minutes, maybe 30. Another pause, this one softer. "Soph, how are you doing, honestly?" "I'm okay," she said. "I'm better now that I know you're—" She stopped. "You scared me, Ethan. Walking out like that with 2 broken ribs." "I know." "You could have." "I know." His voice was quiet. "But Alex was walking into something that had more people than we thought, and I—" He stopped. "He's the best person I've ever worked for, Soph. Whatever else is true about his world, whatever complicated thing is happening between you two, that I've decided I'm going to stop trying to manage. He is a good man in the ways that count. And I wasn't going to sit in an apartment while he walked into a setup." She sat with that. "Don't ever do it again," she said. "I can't promise that." "I know." She closed her eyes. "Come back safe." "Always do," he said. He hung up. She looked across the room at Torres, who was looking at his screen with the focused expression of someone deliberately not listening to a private conversation. "Thank you," she said, "for the updates." He glanced up. "Standard protocol," he said. It was absolutely not standard protocol. They both knew that. "Sure," she said. Alexander came back at the 2-hour mark. She heard the door before she saw him. Heard the particular sound of his team moving through the space, the efficient, low-voiced coordination that had become familiar enough over 4 days to feel like something she recognized in her bones. Then he was in the doorway. He looked at her first, before anything else, before checking in with Torres or looking at the room or taking off his coat. He looked at her the way you look at something you've been afraid of losing for the last 2 hours. She looked back. The room had other people in it. Neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. Then Carver appeared behind him and said, "Debrief in 5." And the moment passed, and Alexander was back to being the person who ran the room. But he had looked at her first. She held that. The debrief was fast and dense, and Sophia sat on the edge of it listening, picking up the shape of what had happened. Even when the language moved into shorthand, she didn't fully know. Caruso's representative, a man named Holt, which sounded wrong for someone in this world too, plain, too ordinary, had given them a full accounting within the first 30 minutes of the drive back. The scope of what Caruso had built over 6 years was larger than anyone had estimated. It extended beyond New York. There were financial arrangements with 3 other organizations in 2 other cities. There were properties. There were plans. None of it was aimed specifically at Alexander's operation, which was the first surprise. It was aimed at the entire structure, the entire city. Caruso didn't want to take down Alexander Moretti. He wanted to destabilize the whole arrangement that Alexander had spent 6 years carefully managing the balance of power, that whatever anyone thought of the people maintaining it, kept things from tipping into something much more chaotic and much more dangerous for everyone. "He's not trying to replace you," Carver said. "He's trying to erase what I built," Alexander said. "What did you build?" Sophia said. The room looked at her. She held the question steady. "I mean it. I want to understand. Because 6 years ago, according to Holt, Caruso decided that whatever you were doing needed to be dismantled. What were you doing?" Alexander was quiet for a moment. "When I took over," he said, "there were 4 major operations in this city, all of them running independently, all of them willing to hit each other to gain ground. People were getting caught in it, not people in the life civilians. The kind of people who just happened to be in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time." He paused. "I spent 2 years building a framework. Agreements. Boundaries. Nobody crosses into anyone else's territory. Nobody hits civilian-adjacent targets. Disputes go through a process instead of through violence." He looked at the table. "It's not a perfect system. I'm not going to tell you it's a moral system, but it's a functional one. And it's kept this city from becoming what 3 other cities have become in the last 5 years." Sophia looked at him. "And Caruso hates it," she said. "Caruso thinks cooperation is weakness," Alexander said. "He believes the only sustainable model is dominance. One organization, total control, no agreements because there's no one left to agree with. And he was going to use the chaos of your organization falling apart to make that happen," she said. "Yes." She thought about that. "So this was never really about you personally. You were just the obstacle." "I'm the keystone," he said. "If I fall, the framework falls. If the framework falls, the whole thing collapses," she finished. "Yes." The room was quiet. "Then we need to not fall," Sophia said. Something moved through the room, not quite amusement, not quite relief, but something in that family. Carver, for the first time in 4 days, almost smiled. The question of Caruso came to a head 2 hours later. Holt had given them everything he knew, which turned out to be substantial, but not complete. Caruso was careful in the way of men who have spent decades in a world where knowing too much about someone makes you dangerous. He compartmentalized. Holt knew his own piece thoroughly, and the rest only vaguely. What he knew vaguely, but clearly enough, was that Caruso had a contingency. Something he had built to deploy if the operation against Alexander failed. Something designed not as a second attack, but as a public exposure documents evidence the kind of information that wouldn't bring down Alexander's operation militarily, but would poison it politically. Hand it to the right people, and create a problem that couldn't be solved the way the other problems had been solved. He's going to burn it all on the way out, Carver said. If he thinks it's already lost, Alexander said. How long before he thinks it's lost? He knows Holt didn't come back, Torres said. He'll know within hours if he doesn't know already. Then we have hours, Alexander said. To do what? Ethan said. To find him before he uses it. The room began to move, the organized, purposeful movement of people who know their jobs and are doing them. Phones out, maps up, locations cross-referenced with everything Holt had given them. Sophia was watching Alexander. He was standing slightly apart from the activity, not removed from it, but occupying the particular position of someone who is running the calculation that everyone else is feeding into. She had watched him do it 3 times in 4 days. She understood the look now. She went to him. You already have an idea, she said quietly. Holt mentioned a property, he said equally quiet. Not as a location Caruso would go to. As a location Caruso would never go to because it was already burned. Something he'd liquidated 2 years ago. He paused. Which means it's perfect. Because nobody would think to look there. Because I wouldn't think to look there, he corrected. Caruso knows how I work. He knows I'd cross-reference known properties. He sold that one specifically so it wouldn't be on my list. He looked at her. The thing about Caruso is that every move he makes is designed around what he thinks I'll do. He's been studying me for 6 years. Then think like him, she said. I'm trying. No, think like him thinking about you. What would he think you'd do right now? Where would he be certain you wouldn't look? He was quiet. He'd think I'd pull back, he said slowly. He'd think that after tonight, with everything we've recovered, I'd go defensive, secure the operation, wait him out. Because that's what a cautious person does, she said. Yes. But you're not going defensive. No. So the place he'd be certain you wouldn't go, she said, is somewhere that only makes sense if you're moving forward. Somewhere aggressive. He looked at her. Something shifted in his face. The Caruso family had a building on the east side, he said. Not on any list. I only know about it because my father mentioned it once 20 years ago. It was their original base of operations. Before my father's time even. He paused. It's been through 4 owners. On paper, it's a commercial property, a restaurant supply warehouse. He was quiet. Caruso would assume I don't know about it. My father mentioned it once offhand, and my father has been dead for 9 years. But you remember, she said. I remember everything my father told me, he said. Sophia looked at him, at the weight of that sentence. Then that's where he is, she said. He held her gaze for a moment. Then he turned to Carver. East 44th, he said. The Harmon warehouse. We move in 20 minutes. He told her to stay. She expected to argue about it. She had been ready to argue about it. She had the argument assembled and everything. But the way he said it this time was different from all the other times. He came to her specifically away from the group, and he stood close enough that the conversation was only between them, and he said, I need you here. Not because you can't handle what's out there, because if you're out there, I'm thinking about you instead of the operation, and that will get someone killed. She looked at him. That's honest, she said. I'm trying to be. Okay, she said. He blinked. That's it. You gave me an honest reason, she said. I'm not going to argue with an honest reason. He was quiet for a second. Thank you, he said. Be fast, she said. And be careful. He started to turn. Alexander. He turned back. She stepped forward and put her hand against his chest. Flat brief, just a moment of contact, and she felt his breath catch slightly through the fabric of his jacket. Come back, she said. He put his hand over hers. Just for a second. Then he left. This time the wait was 40 minutes. 40 minutes in which Torres stayed quiet because nothing was being transmitted that he could track. And Ethan, who had been firmly physically and somewhat forcibly prevented from going a second time by Carver, personally sat in the kitchen with his coffee and his broken ribs and his worry. Sophia sat with him. They didn't talk much. They had gotten past the point in 4 days where they needed to fill silence with words. They were siblings. Silence between them had its own language. At the 35-minute mark, Ethan said, "He's going to be fine." "I know," she said. "You don't look like you know." "I know it up here." She pressed 2 fingers to her temple. "The rest of me is slower." Ethan looked at his coffee. "He's the best I've seen at this. Whatever this is. Whatever you want to call it. I've watched him in situations that should have gone wrong, 15 different ways, and he stopped. He sees things, options. He sees them before anyone else in the room sees them, and he moves before anyone else knows there's movement to be made." "I know," she said. "I've watched him do it." "Have you?" It wasn't quite a question. 4 days, she said. "I've watched him for 4 days. And," she looked at her brother, "and what I see is someone who has spent a very long time making sure no one gets close enough to see him clearly. And who has, I don't know. I don't know if he let his guard down or if I just found a crack." She paused. "I keep waiting for the version of him that matches what everyone says he is. The cold version. The ruthless version." "He is that version," Ethan said carefully. "I know." "Soph." "Ethan, I know he is. I have not missed that." She met her brother's eyes. "But that's not all he is. And the parts that aren't, that they're real. They're as real as the rest of it." She paused. "I'm not naive about what his life looks like. I'm not walking into this pretending it's something it isn't." "What are you walking into?" Ethan said. She was quiet for a moment. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "I just know I'm not walking away." Ethan looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded. One small nod. That was all. But from Ethan, she understood that was everything. Alexander came back at the 43-minute mark. He came back alone. Carver and 2 others had stayed behind to manage the aftermath, and he walked in the door, and he looked different from all the other times he had come back in 4 days. Not injured, not shaken. Different in a quieter way. He found her in the kitchen. He sat down across from her. She waited. "It's over," he said. She felt the words settle over the room. "Caruso," she said. "In custody. Federal contact, someone I've worked with before, someone who will handle it correctly." He looked at his hands. The contingency, the documents he was planning to release. He had them on him. Physical copies, which surprised me. He was old-fashioned about it. A pause. "They've been secured." And his operation. Without him, without Holt, without the Vanzettis moving on his behalf, it collapses. Not overnight, but it collapses. He looked up at her. "The framework holds." She held his gaze. "And Marco," she said. I was quiet for a moment. "His daughter is safe. She and her mother have been moved. They don't know who moved them or why they think it's a building safety issue. A gas leak, something ordinary. They'll be back in their home in a week, and nobody will have touched them." He paused. "Marco knows. I told him an hour ago." "What did he say?" "He didn't say anything for about 2 minutes. Alexander's voice was quiet. "Then he said he was sorry. Not to save himself. He said it because he meant it." A pause. "I could tell the difference." "What did you say back?" He looked at her steadily. "I said I understood," he said. "And that understanding doesn't fix what he did, but it changes what comes next." Sophia felt something move through her. "That was the right thing to say," she said. "It was the true thing," he said. "I'm trying to match those up better." She looked at him across the kitchen table. At 4 days of work, and no sleep, and a crisis managed, and a man he had trusted for 11 years, who had betrayed him, and a framework he had built for 6 years that had almost come apart, and the reason it hadn't was sitting across from him right now, and she was fairly certain he knew that. "Alexander," she said. "I know," he said. "You don't know what I was going to say. You were going to say that it's over and I should sleep, and that the rest of it can wait until morning." He looked at her. And I'm going to tell you that I've been waiting to finish a sentence for 4 days, and I'd like to finish it now if that's acceptable. She folded her hands on the table. Finish it, she said. He looked at her. I told you I was going to ask you something when this was over, he said. I told you it was going to matter. You did. I've been trying to figure out how to say it in a way that doesn't sound like a calculation, because everything I say sounds like a calculation. It's a thing I do, and I know I do it, and around you it's... He stopped. Around you it stops working. I'll be running a sentence, and then you'll look at me, and the calculation falls apart. She was very still. What I want to say, he said carefully, is that I don't know what the next version of my life looks like. I know what I want it to look like, which is different. And I know that the version I want, the one that isn't just the operation and the framework and the management of competing interests, that version only started to feel possible 4 days ago. In this kitchen. He held her gaze. In this kitchen at 3 in the morning, with a woman who said true things and didn't flinch when I said them back. Sophia felt her breath settle differently in her chest. I'm not asking you to step into my world, he said. I'm asking you to let me step further into yours. The flower shop, your grandmother's recipes, the arrangements named after songs, the Sunday rule. His voice was quiet and exact and real. I'm asking if there's room for me in that version, the ordinary version. She looked at him. You're asking if I'll let you be ordinary with me, she said. Yes, he said. That's exactly what I'm asking. She was quiet for a moment. Not because she didn't know the answer, because she wanted to say it right. You're never going to be fully ordinary, she said. I know that. Your life is what it is, and I'm not pretending otherwise. She held his gaze. But there are parts of you that are completely ordinary. The part that remembers what flowers mean. The part that asks about my grandmother. The part that knocked before coming into a room because you thought I needed privacy. She paused. Those parts are real. And yes, there's room for those parts. He was very still. Just those parts, he said. She almost smiled. We'll negotiate the rest, she said. Something moved through his face, the full version of the almost amusement she had been watching for 4 days, the one that had never quite arrived. It arrived now. Negotiate, he repeated. I'm a small business owner, she said. I negotiate everything. He looked at her for a moment. Then he reached across the table and took her hand. The way he had taken the note from her 3 days ago, carefully with intention, like something he had decided to do and was doing fully. She let him. They sat like that for a moment in this quiet kitchen. Ethan found them there 20 minutes later. He stood in the doorway and looked at his sister's hand, in his boss's hand, and he did the thing that Sophia had been watching him build toward for 4 days. He made a choice. There's food, he said. Torres ordered something. It's in the main room. That was all. He turned and walked back out. Sophia looked at Alexander. Alexander looked at her. That, she said, is my brother saying he's okay with it. I understood that, he said. I wasn't sure you would. I'm very good at reading rooms, he said. You're very good at reading everything except yourself, she said. He considered that. Fair. She squeezed his hand before letting go, and they went to find the food Torres had ordered, and the 3 of them. Ethan with his broken ribs, Sophia with 4 days of crisis still running through her, Alexander with whatever the last 4 days had cost him. That none of them were going to tabulate tonight, sat around the table and ate and talked about things that had nothing to do with the operation. Ethan told a story about something that had happened 3 years ago that he had never told either of them that turned out to be both alarming and genuinely funny, and Sophia laughed harder than she had laughed in 4 days, which meant she laughed harder than she had laughed in a long time. Alexander watched her laugh. She caught him watching. He didn't look away. The practical conversation happened the next morning. Sophia had slept. Actually slept, finally deeply, the way you sleep when something that has been pulled tight for days finally releases, and she woke to her phone showing 3 messages from Maya, 2 from her supplier, and 1 from the building manager of her apartment, asking if everything was all right since he hadn't seen her in days. She sat up and looked at her phone and felt the shape of her actual life. The life that existed outside this apartment, outside the last 4 days, come back into focus. She found Alexander in the main room, which was quieter now, most of his people gone or working remotely. The particular intensity of the last 4 days settling into something that felt more like aftermath than emergency. "I need to go back," she said. He looked up. "The shop," she said. "My apartment. Maya has been sending me updates on the cleanup and my supplier needs confirmation on an order. And I have a life that has been on pause for 4 days and needs to start moving again." He nodded slowly. "I know." "I'm not—" She stopped. "I'm not disappearing. I just need to go back to my actual life, the one I built." "I know," he said again. No resistance, no calculation, just acknowledgement. "I'll have someone go with you, not visibly, not in a way that—" "Alexander. Just for a few days," he said. "While we confirm that Caruso's people have stood down, and there's no residual." "A few days," she said. "A few days," he confirmed. She looked at him. "And after the few days," she said. He stood up. He came toward her, not fast, not urgent, just deliberate, and he stopped close enough that she had to look up slightly. "After the few days," he said, "I'd like to see the shop." She raised an eyebrow. "The destroyed shop that Maya is currently cleaning up." "The shop that you're going to rebuild," he said. "I'd like to see it." She looked at him. "It's going to take weeks to get it back to what it was," she said. "I know. You want to watch a small flower shop on 31st Street get rebuilt." "I want to see the arrangement you are going to name," he said. "The one that's stark and beautiful and has something painful underneath it." He held her gaze. "You said you hadn't named it yet." She felt the air in the room change the way it had changed in that kitchen on the first night. "I named it," she said. "In my head. Last night." "What did you call it?" She looked at him. 3 in the morning, she said. I was very still. She watched him understand. It watched the moment it landed fully, what she meant by it, the kitchen and the coffee, and the conversation that had started all of this. "That's a good name," he said quietly. "I think so too," she said. She picked up her bag. She was almost at the door when he said her name. She turned. I was standing exactly where she had left him, and he was looking at her with the expression she had finally found a name for the one she had been cataloging since the first night, the one that had appeared in pieces and increments, and was now complete and visible, and no longer something either of them was trying not to see. It looked like a man who had stopped being alone, not fixed, not resolved, just no longer alone. "Sunday," he said. "What?" "The shop closes on Sunday," he said. "Your grandmother's rule." "Yes," she said. "Then Sunday," he said. "Not the shop, just Sunday." She understood what he was asking. "Sunday," she said. She walked out. In the elevator, going down. She looked at her reflection in the metal door, and she thought about the last 4 days, about broken ribs, and fake hospitals, and communication intercepts, and a man named Daniel, living somewhere safe under a borrowed name. And she thought about her grandmother's rule, which was that Sunday was sacred, which her grandmother had always meant as rest and renewal, and the particular grace of ordinary days. She thought that her grandmother, who had been a very practical and clear-eyed woman, would have understood this. She thought her grandmother might even have approved. The elevator doors opened. She walked out into the city. Her street, her actual life waiting to be picked back up, behind her 14 floors up. Alexander Moretti stood at a window. She knew it without turning around, felt it the way you feel. Weather, and she didn't turn around because she was moving forward now, and moving forward was the right direction. But she felt it. She felt it all the way down the block. The shop took 11 days to rebuild. Maya, who was extraordinary in the way that only best friends of 15 years can be extraordinary, had already cleared the damage and started the inventory by the time Sophia got back. The list she had made was meticulous and slightly tearful and entirely practical, which was the most Maya thing that had ever happened. They worked side by side for 11 days. They didn't talk about what had happened, not the full version, not yet. Sophia told Maya enough that Ethan had been hurt, that there had been people connected to his work who had done this, that it was handled now. Maya, who had known Sophia for 15 years and understood what handled meant, when Sophia said it didn't push. What she did on the third day was say, "You're different." Sophia looked up from the arrangement she was rebuilding. Different how? I don't know. Maya studied her. Like something got resolved. Not the shop. I know the shop isn't resolved. We're standing in the half-rebuilt evidence of that. Something else. She tilted her head. Something internal. Sophia set down the stems she was holding. I met someone, she said. Maya stared at her. During all of this, she said. During all of this. Sophia Rose Bennett. I know. During the worst week of your professional life surrounded by you, said people connected to Ethan's work, which means... Maya stopped. Started again. You met someone. Yes. And... Sophia looked at her friend at 15 years of friendship and honesty and the particular trust of someone who has seen you at your worst and your best and all the complicated middle. And Sunday, she said. Maya blinked. What? He's coming Sunday, Sophia said. To the shop. I'll introduce you. Maya looked at her for a long moment. Is he good? She said finally. Not good looking. Not good for you. Just good. The question that matters. Sophia thought about the kitchen at 3 a.m. About the name Daniel said out loud for the first time in 8 years. About it matters and were past tense and a hand over hers for exactly 1 second. He's trying to be, she said. Maya considered that. That's the right answer, she said. She picked up her own stems and went back to work. And Sophia stood in the middle of her rebuilding shop, the shelves going back up, the display cases, returning the space slowly becoming itself again, and she felt underneath the work and the exhaustion and the 11 days of putting things back together. Something she hadn't expected to feel this soon. She felt it was already worth it. All of it. Even the parts that had cost her. Even the parts she didn't have words for yet. She picked up the white ranunculus and the silver dusty miller and the paper whites, and she started building the arrangement she had designed 3 weeks ago and named in her head the night everything changed. 3 a.m. Stark and beautiful, with something underneath it that wasn't painful anymore. Sunday came the way Sunday always came in November, quietly, without announcement, carrying the particular quality of a day that belongs to no one, and therefore belongs to everyone. Sophia was at the shop by 8 a.m. Not because she needed to be. The shop was closed on Sundays. Her grandmother's rule unchanged in 30 years, unchanged now. But she had woken up at 7 with the particular alertness of someone who has been waiting for something without admitting they've been waiting, and she had made coffee and looked at her apartment ceiling for exactly 4 minutes before deciding that lying there was accomplishing nothing. She was rearranging the front display when Maya arrived at 9. You're here early, Maya said. I live close, Sophia said. You always live close. You're never here on Sunday. Maya set down her bag and looked at the display Sophia was adjusting, and then looked at Sophia's face, and did the thing she had been doing for 15 years, which was reading the subtext without being asked to. He's coming this morning. He said Sunday. But not what time. No. Maya looked at the arrangement Sophia was positioning at the center of the display. The white ranunculus, the silver dusty miller, the paper whites. 3 in the morning, finally complete, finally placed where it was supposed to be. That's beautiful, Maya said quietly. I know, Sophia said. Is it for him? Sophia's hands stilled on the display. It's for the shop, she said. It's where it was always going to go. Maya said nothing. But her expression said everything a 15-year friendship gives you the right to say without words. Sophia went back to adjusting. He arrived at 10:15. She heard the door, the particular sound of it opening, the small bell she had rehung herself on the 8th day of rebuilding, and she was in the back room when it happened, so she heard him before she saw him. She heard him stop just inside the entrance. She heard the silence of a man looking at something and taking it in. She walked out from the back, I was standing in the middle of the shop with his coat still on, and he was looking at the front display, and the expression on his face was not the one she had catalogued over the first 4 days. It was newer than that, more open than that. He was looking at 3 in the morning, the way people look at things that mean more than they expected. "You finished it," he said. 11 days, she said. He turned to look at her. "You rebuilt the whole shop in 11 days. Maya helped, still." He looked around at the shelves, the display cases, the window arrangement, all of it back and more than back, because she had made decisions during the rebuild that she hadn't had the courage to make before. Bigger displays, bolder arrangements. The wall she had always meant to paint a deeper green and kept putting off because change required a kind of commitment that the old version of her had been careful about. "It looks different from before." "It is different from before," she said. He looked at her. "Better different," he said. "I think so." She moved to the counter. "I made changes I'd been putting off. I figured if I was rebuilding anyway, I should build the version I actually wanted instead of just the version I was used to." He was quiet for a moment. "That's not just about the shop," he said. "No," she agreed. "It's not." He almost smiled. She had learned to recognize the version that wasn't quite a smile and was actually more than one. The door opened behind him. Maya came in from the back. She had been in the workroom demonstrably and deliberately in the workroom in the way of someone giving people space, while also making it clear she was nearby, and she stopped when she saw Alexander and did a version of the rapid, full assessment look that Sophia recognized as Maya's fundamental response to anything unexpected. "Maya," Sophia said, "this is Alexander." Maya looked at him. He looked at her. "Maya," he said, like he already knew which Maya she was, which of course he did, because Sophia had mentioned her name approximately 40 times over 4 days, and he remembered everything. "Alexander," Maya said. She said it the way she said the names of things she was still forming an opinion about. Neutral, attentive, withholding. "I've heard a lot about you," he said. "I've heard almost nothing about you," Maya said pleasantly. "Which tells me something about you all by itself." Alexander looked at Sophia. "She's exactly what I expected," he said. "She's terrifying," Sophia agreed. Maya picked up a pair of floral shears from the counter. "I'm going to be in the workroom," she said. "Don't mind me." She went back to the workroom. In the particular silence that followed, Alexander turned to Sophia. "She likes me," he said. "She's deciding," Sophia said. "With Maya, those look the same from the outside." "How will I know when she's decided?" "She'll either start talking to you directly, or she'll start feeding you things," Sophia said. "If she offers you coffee, you're in." He considered this. "What if she offers me something other than coffee?" "Then you're in, and she's showing off," Sophia said. "Either way, good sign." Something moved through his face. The real version of the thing she had been watching for the one that had started arriving more frequently in the 11 days since the crisis. He was learning to let it show, not performing it, just not hiding it. "Come look at this," she said. She walked him through the shop, the way she would walk anyone through it, who she wanted to actually understand it. Not the customer tour, not the professional explanation, but the real version. This arrangement is from a supplier in Vermont, who has been growing ranunculus for 40 years, and whose daughter now runs the operation and sends Sophia a handwritten note with every order. This shelf was the first one she put up herself in 2017, and it's slightly crooked, and she has never fixed it because crooked means she did it herself. This is where she keeps the orders for the following week, handwritten in a system that makes sense only to her and Maya, and has survived 3 attempts to digitize it. He listened to all of it, not politely. Actually, he asked questions that were specific and real, not questions designed to show he was listening, but questions that could only come from someone who had actually absorbed what she said and wanted to know more. What does ranunculus mean to growers differently than to buyers? How did she develop the naming system for arrangements? And is it always music, or are there exceptions? The crooked shelf, did she consider fixing it at any point during the rebuild? No, she said. Not for a second. Good, he said. She looked at him. Why good? Because the things that show how something was built matter more than the things that look like it arrived finished, he said. The crooked shelf is information. It tells you something about the shop that a straight one wouldn't. She looked at the shelf. She looked at him. You should have been a different kind of person, she said. Not as a criticism, as an observation. Probably, he said, simply, without defensiveness or self-pity. Do you ever think about it? What the other version would have looked like? He was quiet. When I was 19, he said, I wanted to study architecture. I had applied. I had been accepted. He paused. My father died 3 weeks before the semester started, and someone had to run what he left behind. She had not known this. She stood very still. You gave it up, she said. I didn't think of it as giving it up, he said. I thought of it as what needed to happen, what I had to do. He looked at the crooked shelf. It was only later that I understood those aren't the same thing. She looked at him. Architecture, she said. Structures, he said. How things hold together. What makes something stable enough to last? A pause. Turns out I found a different application. The framework, she said. The agreements between organizations. Yes. He held her gaze. Different materials, same problem. Sophia stood in her rebuilt shop 11 days after the worst week of her professional life, looking at a man who had wanted to study how buildings hold together and had spent 20 years instead building something invisible and load-bearing that kept a city from collapsing into itself. She thought, I need to stop discovering things about him. She thought, I am never going to stop discovering things about him. Coffee, Maya said from the workroom doorway. Both of them turned. Maya was holding 2 cups. She looked at Alexander specifically when she said it. Not at Sophia. At him. He looked at Sophia. She confirmed quietly. The 3 of them sat in the workroom for an hour. It was, in Sophia's experience of the last 11 days, the most surprising hour she had lived through. And the last 11 days had contained several genuinely surprising hours. Maya, once she had decided, was direct in the way of someone who has been best friends with the same person for 15 years and considers that tenure to confer certain rights. She asked Alexander direct questions, not hostile direct. What did he do? How long had he known Ethan? What had happened to the shop and why, and was the situation actually finished or just finished for now? Alexander answered all of it. Not fully. There were things he wouldn't say in detail, and she respected that, but honestly, which Sophia had come to understand was his default when someone asked him something real. Maya listened. She absorbed. She refilled his coffee without being asked, which Sophia clocked and filed away. At the end of the hour, Maya said, You're going to hurt her eventually. The room went quiet. Maya, Sophia started. Not intentionally, Maya said, still looking at Alexander. I don't think you're that kind of person, but the life you have, what it is, what it requires, it's going to create situations where she gets hurt, situations you can't control. She held his gaze. I need to know if you understand that. Alexander was quiet for a moment. Yes, he said. I understand it. And I think about it. He didn't look away from her. I think about it more than anything else. Whether the cost of what I am is something she should be paying. He paused. I don't have a clean answer. I don't think there is one. Then what do you have? Maya said. I have a commitment to being honest about it, he said. Every time, to her, about what things cost, and what I can change, and what I can't. He looked at Sophia briefly, and then back at Maya. And to changing what I can. Maya looked at him for a long time. Then she picked up her coffee. Okay, she said. That was all. But from Maya, Sophia understood that was the whole thing. He stayed until noon. When he left, he stood at the door for a moment, the same door he had stood inside when he first arrived, looking at the display, and he turned back. Next Sunday, he said. The shop is closed on Sundays, she said. I know. His voice was steady. Next Sunday anyway. She looked at him. Next Sunday, she said. He left. Maya appeared behind her approximately 4 seconds later. Okay, Maya said. You said okay already. I'm saying it again with more information. Maya stood beside her, and they both looked at the closed door. She stopped, started again. He's not what I thought he'd be. What did you think he'd be? Bigger, Maya said. Louder, more. She waved a hand. More everything. The kind of man who fills a room by taking up space in it. She paused. He fills a room by making the room quiet. Yes, Sophia said. That's harder to do, Maya said. And harder to walk away from. Sophia looked at the closed door. I know, she said. The next 3 weeks moved differently from any 3 weeks Sophia could remember. The shop rebuilt its rhythm. Orders came back. Regular customers returned. A woman named Mrs. Alvarez picked up the orange tulip arrangement. Sophia had been preparing when Ethan called, except the original had been destroyed, so she made it again from scratch, and Mrs. Alvarez said it was even better than usual, which meant Sophia had actually improved during the worst week of her life, which felt like something her grandmother would have had a saying about. Ethan healed. He came by the shop twice that first week, once, with his arm still moving carefully, once with the careful movement mostly gone, and both times he sat at the work table while Sophia arranged and talked to her the way he used to when they were young, before the world had put so much space between them. You look better, she said the second visit. I feel better, he said. Ribs mostly. The other stuff, he gestured vaguely, takes longer. The other stuff meaning Marco and Reyes. He was quiet. I've worked alongside those men for years. You think you know someone, and then you find out. He stopped. I know why they did what they did. That doesn't make it not hurt. No, she agreed. Understanding something doesn't make it not hurt. It just means you understand it while it hurts. He looked at her. When did you get wise? He said. I've always been wise, she said. You were too busy protecting me to notice. He almost smiled. Fair. What's going to happen to them, Marco and Reyes? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Marco's situation is complicated. Alex is still working through it. He's not going to let it go without consequence, but he's also not going to... He stopped. He's different, Soph, in how he's handling it. More deliberate. Like he's actually thinking about what the right thing is instead of just what the effective thing is. He paused. That's new. She kept her eyes on the arrangement she was building. Is it? She said. Don't do that, Ethan said. Don't do the thing where you act like it's not connected to you. I'm not... Sophia. She set down her stems. Fine, she said. Maybe it's a little connected. It's entirely connected, Ethan said. And I'm not saying that as a complaint. I'm saying it because you should know. You should know what you're doing to him. Not accidentally, not as a side effect. What you are actually doing on purpose, just by being who you are. She looked at her brother. Ethan. He called me last Tuesday, Ethan said. Which he never does unless it's operational. He called me and asked me about Mom. She blinked. What? About what she was like. About what it was like growing up in our house before everything got hard. He held her gaze. He wanted to know about ordinary things. He wanted to know about a life that was just regular, like he was trying to understand what that felt like from the inside. A pause. I talked to him for an hour. He asked about you, but also about me, about the apartment we grew up in, about the dinner table, about whether Mom sang while she cooked. His voice was quiet. He wanted to know if she sang while she cooked. Sophia's throat tightened. Did you tell him? She said. I told him she sang off-key and refused to admit it, Ethan said, and that she made the best pot roast in the borough, even though she denied that too. He looked at Sophia. He laughed. Soph, he actually laughed. Not the controlled version. The real one. She stood very still with her hands in the stems. I don't know what I'm doing, she said quietly. I want to be clear about that. I don't have a plan. I don't have a map. I'm just... being yourself, Ethan said. Yes. That's the whole thing, he said. That's all it is. You being exactly who you are is what's changing him. And I spent a long time being afraid of that, and I've decided to stop." He stood up. "Because watching it happen is—" He stopped, pressed his lips together. "It's something I didn't expect to see in my life. Someone reach into that man's world and find the person in it." He looked at her. "I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think he'd let it be possible." She looked at her brother. "He called about Mom," she said softly. "He called about Mom." She picked up the stems again because she needed something to do with her hands. "I'm going to be okay," she said. "With all of it, whatever it looks like." "I know you are," Ethan said. "You always are. That's the infuriating thing about you." He kissed her on the top of her head, the way he used to when they were teenagers, and she was upset about something, and he didn't have the right words. Some things didn't need to change. Alexander came on Sunday, and the Sunday after that, and the one after that. By the fourth Sunday, it was a fact of the shop's life. The way the crooked shelf was a fact. The way the Motown arrangements in October were a fact. A thing that had always been and would continue to be. He always came at 10:15. She didn't know if that was deliberate or just the rhythm he had settled into. She never asked. She was always there. Maya had started calling him Alex by the third Sunday, which was Maya's version of a formal declaration. Alexander had not corrected her, which was his. On the fourth Sunday, Ethan came too. He arrived at 10:30 after Alexander, she noticed, and he sat at the work table with his coffee and talked to both of them in the easy way of someone who has made a peace with something and is discovering to his own slight surprise that the peace is comfortable. It was not uncomplicated. She didn't pretend it was uncomplicated. Alexander's world was not Sunday mornings and slightly crooked shelves. It was the framework and the decisions and the weight of being the person who held certain things together. It was Marco whose situation had been resolved with a severity that was also somehow a mercy. His daughter still safe, Marco himself given a choice instead of a verdict which he had taken with both hands. It was Reyes who had been let go, not violently, but completely severed from the organization in a way that was final and unambiguous, and had cost Alexander something that he didn't talk about, but that she could see in the way he went quiet sometimes when the name came up. It was the knowledge which she carried every day, that the man who sat across from her on Sunday mornings and asked about her grandmother and remembered the name of her ranunculus supplier in Vermont was also the man who ran something large and serious and not always clean. She knew all of that. She had known it from the kitchen at 3 a.m. She had chosen anyway. And she would choose again every morning with full information. That was what choosing actually meant. The thing she hadn't expected. The thing that arrived on a Wednesday, 6 weeks after the crisis in the middle of a completely ordinary afternoon, while she was trimming stems and listening to old Motown on the speaker Maya had installed, was the letter. It arrived by messenger. A real messenger, an actual person who handed it to her at the counter with both hands, which was not how anything arrived anymore. A cream envelope. Her name on the front in handwriting she didn't recognize. She opened it. Inside was a single card. On it, in the same unfamiliar handwriting, "My brother tells me you are the reason he called me last month for the first time in 8 years. I don't know your name. I don't know anything about you. I know only that he called and that he sounded different. Like someone I remembered. I wanted to thank whoever you are. D." Sophia stood at the counter with the card in her hands. D. Daniel. She read it twice. 3 times. She set it down very carefully on the counter. She called Alexander. He answered on the second ring. Sophia. "Did you contact Daniel?" she said. A pause. A real one. "Yes," he said. "When?" 5 weeks ago." His voice was careful. "I didn't tell him anything about my life. I didn't tell him where I was or what I was doing. I just called. For an hour." A pause. "I told him about Mom. About the pot roast." He stopped. She felt something press against her chest from the inside. "Alexander," she said. "I know. You called your brother." "Yes." "For the first time in 8 years." "Yes." She stood there with one hand on the counter and one hand holding the phone. And she thought about what Ethan had told her. He wanted to know if she sang while she cooked, and she understood suddenly and fully what had actually happened over the last 6 weeks. It wasn't just the framework holding. It wasn't just the crisis resolved. It wasn't just Sunday mornings and coffee and a crooked shelf. Alexander Moretti had started reaching back toward his own life. The life that had existed before 23, before the weight before the walls. Not leaving behind what he had built. Not dismantling the framework or walking away from the organization or becoming someone he wasn't. Just reaching back. Picking up what he had put down. Making room for both versions of himself to exist at the same time. He sent me a card, she said. Another pause. Longer. He what? Alexander said. A card, a real card, delivered by messenger. She looked at it on the counter. He said you called him last month. He said you sounded different, like someone he remembered. The silence on the line was the kind that had shape. Sophia, he said. I know, she said. I didn't give him. He found me anyway, she said. He's your brother. He's resourceful. She paused. Also, Alexander, he reached out. He reached back, which means he was waiting for you to reach first. The silence stretched. 8 years, he said. 8 years, she agreed. And he answered. She heard something in the silence after that, not a sound exactly. More like the quality of a silence that contains something being let go of. A long-held thing finally set down. I need to see you, he said. It's Wednesday, she said. I know it's Wednesday. The shop is open on Wednesdays. I know the shop is open on Wednesdays. She looked at the card, at the single initial, D. Come at 6, she said. We close at 6. I'll be there at 6, he said. She hung up. Maya appeared from the workroom. She looked at Sophia's face. She looked at the card on the counter. She picked it up, read it, set it back down. His brother, she said. His brother, Sophia confirmed. Maya was quiet for a moment. This is the part, she said, where you understand what you actually did. I didn't do anything, Sophia said. You just talked to him like he was a person, Maya said. At 3 a.m. in someone else's kitchen during the worst week of your life. She held Sophia's gaze. You looked at the most powerful and most isolated man in the city, and you talked to him like he was just a man. And he believed you. Sophia looked at the card. He called his brother, she said. He called his brother, Maya said, because someone reminded him he was still allowed to. He arrived at 6 on the dot. The shop was empty. Maya had left at 5:50 with the particular tact she had been deploying for 6 weeks, which looked like coincidence and was anything but. Sophia was at the counter when he walked in. He looked at her. She looked at him. Show me the card, he said. She slid it across the counter. He picked it up, read it, set it back down. He stood very still with his hand flat on the counter next to the card. I didn't plan for this, he said. I know. Any of it. He looked up at her. I called Ethan because I needed to know you were safe. I went to that hospital because he'd been with me for 7 years. I sat in a kitchen at 3 a.m. because I couldn't sleep, and you were already there. He paused. None of it was a plan. I know, she said again. And now my brother has sent a letter, and I'm standing in a flower shop on 31st Street on a Wednesday evening, and the strangest part. He stopped. The strangest part, she prompted. The strangest part is that this is the most like myself I have felt in 8 years, he said. Standing here, in a shop that smells like winter flowers and has a crooked shelf and closes on Sundays. He looked at her. That doesn't make sense. It makes complete sense, she said. Sophia, Alexander. She came around the counter. She stood in front of him, and she looked up at him, and she said what she had been saying in different forms since the kitchen at 3 a.m, the version she hadn't said directly yet. You are not just what your life made you. You never were. You're also the 19-year-old who wanted to study architecture. You're the man who calls his brother after 8 years because something reminded him that he's still allowed to. You're the person who remembers how people take their coffee and what songs were playing when something important happened, and that Sunday was someone's grandmother's rule. She held his gaze. Those things don't have to be in conflict. You can be all of it, the hard parts and the ordinary parts, at the same time. He looked at her for a long moment. That sounds very straightforward when you say it, he said. It's not straightforward, she said. It's just true. He reached out and touched her face, one hand, just briefly, the back of his fingers against her cheek, and the gesture was so simple and so unlike everything else in his world that it hit her harder than anything complicated could have. What are you doing on Sunday? He said. The shop is closed on Sunday, she said. I know, he said. What are you doing? She looked at him. Nothing, I can't move, she said. I want to take you somewhere, he said. Not for anything operational, not because there's a situation to manage. He held her gaze. Just somewhere. Because I want to show you something that has nothing to do with any of this. What is it? Something my father showed me once, he said. A building. Old, not remarkable by any measure, but it has a particular structural element that my father pointed out, and I've never forgotten. He paused. I've never taken anyone there. I've never had anyone to take. She understood what he was offering. Not a date in the conventional sense. Something more specific and more personal than that. A piece of the life he had put down at 23, picked up and carried in private for 20 years, being handed to someone else for the first time. Sunday, she said. Sunday, he said. He dropped his hand. He looked at the card on the counter one more time. I'm going to write back to him, he said. I think you should, she said. And eventually, he stopped. Eventually, she agreed. He looked at her. You're not afraid of any of this, he said. It came out like something he had been sitting with and had finally decided to say. I'm afraid of some of it, she said honestly. I'm afraid of what I don't know yet. I'm afraid of the things in your world I don't have words for. She held his gaze. But I'm not afraid of you. And I'm not afraid of this. She gestured between them. Whatever this is, he repeated. We'll figure out what to call it, she said. We have time. He nodded. He picked up the card and slid it back across the counter to her. Keep it, he said. She looked at him. It's yours, she said. Keep it anyway, he said. So I have a reason to ask for it back. She looked at the card. She picked it up. She put it in the pocket of her apron next to the pen she used to write orders and the small notebook where she kept the names of arrangements she hadn't made yet. He left at 6:20. She stood in the closed shop for a few minutes after in the quiet that Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings had started to share with the smell of winter flowers around her, and the card in her pocket, and the crooked shelf visible from where she stood. She thought about what Maya had said. You looked at the most powerful and most isolated man in the city, and you talked to him like he was just a man. She thought about what Ethan had said. Someone reach into that man's world and find the person in it. She thought about her grandmother, who had believed that Sunday was sacred and that ordinary things were where the real living happened, and that the bravest choice a person could make was to love something fully with complete information. No illusions and both hands open. She thought about a kitchen at 3 a.m. and a man who remembered things and a flower arrangement called 3 a.m. that had been stark and beautiful. And now every time she looked at it in the front display, had something underneath it that was not painful at all. She turned off the lights. She locked the door. She stepped out onto 31st Street, and the city moved around her the way it always did. Fast, indifferent, enormous, and she walked home through it feeling completely and without reservation like herself. Not the careful version, not the version that stood outside her brother's world and kept her rules and stayed in her lane. The real version. The one who had looked at a man carrying 8 years of silence and said, "You are still allowed." The one who had rebuilt her shop in 11 days and named an arrangement after a kitchen conversation and answered the phone in the middle of a crisis and stayed when she could have run. The one who loved completely and deliberately and with both eyes open the most unlikely man in New York City. Alexander Moretti had believed for the better part of 2 decades that the greatest weakness a man in his position could have was someone he loved. He had been exactly right about that. What he had been wrong about what Sophia Bennett had spent the last 6 weeks showing him, not in speeches, not in grand gestures, but in coffee at 3 in the morning. And true things said simply, and a card kept in an apron pocket was what weakness actually meant. It did not mean vulnerable. It did not mean exposed. It did not mean breakable. It meant human. And the most powerful man in the city, standing in a rebuilt flower shop on 31st Street on a Wednesday evening, reading a letter from the brother he had sent away to protect and hearing his own name said without fear, for the first time in longer than he could count, that man was finally after everything completely and unmistakably human. That was not his downfall. That was how he survived.